Chapter 409. He will be devoured by the demonic emperor's power and desires, and his personality will change greatly, becoming a temperamental and bloodthirsty person. The man in the raincoat sighed. He had seen more than one descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline, and all of them were people who had harmed the world. Although they had all been killed in the end, the sins they had committed were far too great. Xiao Jinghong heard him and immediately drew his sword. He was about to commit suicide, but Zhou Xuanji stopped him. "Are you an idiot?" Zhou Xuanji glared at him and cursed. "I don't want to make things difficult for you." Xiao Jinghong bitterly smiled. He understood Zhou Xuanji. Although Zhou Xuanji had the heart to save the world, he was more loyal to his friends. Between the common people and the people around him, Zhou Xuanji would definitely choose the latter. The man in the raincoat advised, "Don't take any chances. The demonic emperor bloodline is extremely dangerous." Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly and said, "The human heart is more powerful than power. Humans fall easily, and it cannot be covered up with power." Xiao Jinghong fell into deep thought. The man in the raincoat was silent. Zhou Xuanji looked at the man in the woven rush raincoat and asked, "You came to find me for this?" The man in the raincoat shook his head and said, "Marquis and Ji Xian have disappeared. Xiao Hongjun has found the tomb of great Emperor Wuwang, but his heart has been stolen. Even the Purple Demon Palace has been recognized by someone. Xiao Hongjun is filled with rage and will probably do something extreme." Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted. Violet Demon Palace? Could it be that Emperor Wuwang's heart was the Violet Demon Monarch's heart? Xiao Jinghong glanced at Zhou Xuanji without leaving any trace. They knew of the Violet Demon Palace, but they did not know of the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Zhou Xuanji asked in curiosity, "Great Emperor Wuwang's heart? How could it be preserved for so long?" He had heard from Emperor Hanlin that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was a creation of the heavens and earth. How could it be the heart of great Emperor Wuwang? The man in the woven rush raincoat replied, "That heart did not belong to great Emperor Wuwang himself. It was a creation of the heavens and earth, and its name was the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Whoever obtained it would have the potential to become a great emperor. After great Emperor Wuwang obtained it, the legend of the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was also erased, and no one knew of it. So that was how it was. No wonder I was able to become a great emperor." Zhou Xuanji came to a realization. The people of the northern wilderness could not become great emperors, so Yang Di could not. The reason why he could do so was because of the transformation of the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. In other words, it was very likely that Xiao Hongjun would find him. Zhou Xuanji put on an act and smiled as he said, "Then help me find out where the Violet Demon Monarch's heart is. With it, can I create another great Emperor Wuwang?" The man in the raincoat was speechless. After a while, he finally said, "You really are greedy." Zhou Xuanji's talent was not inferior to great Emperor Wuwang's, and it might even surpass him. After that, the man in the woven rush raincoat left to help Zhou Xuanji find the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. He would never have guessed that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was in Zhou Xuanji's body. Zhou Xuanji brought Xiao Jinghong to the top of the mountain and gathered all his trusted subordinates. He told them about Xiao Jinghong's awakening. He hoped that their team would be able to remain honest and tell them about the dangers beforehand. As for their trump cards and abilities, they would tell them if they wanted to. If they didn't, it would be a surprise in the future. Everyone was shocked when they found out. Chen Bantian said excitedly, "Brother Xiao, this is incredible. You are actually the inheritor of the demonic emperor bloodline. In the future, you will have a chance to chase after our 10,000-year princes." The little black snake felt incredibly jealous and said, "I also want to awaken. The heavens are unfair." Everyone else also spoke, all of them joking good-naturedly. Of course, there were also people who were pleasantly surprised. The inheritor of the demonic emperor bloodline's talent was not inferior to the 10,000-year princes, and it might even be stronger. Xiao Jinghong felt a warmth in his heart. Meng Tianlang wrapped his arm around his neck and chuckled as he said, "Be careful in the future. I have to follow you wherever you go, or else some evil people might use you and trick you into becoming a demon." Zhou Xuanji had told them many stories, and there were many scenes like this. Xiao Jinghong said grumpily, "I feel like you're more easily tricked." Zhou Xiaoxian hugged Zhou Xuanji and giggled as she said, "Dad, did you let me inherit a special power? Isn't your talent unparalleled in both ancient and modern times?" Zhou Xuanji nodded and said mysteriously, "You know about the Heavenly Emperor, right? He's the master of all gods and is supreme. In actuality, I was the Heavenly Emperor in my previous life, and the constitution I left behind is called the Heavenly Emperor Divine Constitution. It's incredibly domineering," he started to boast, causing Zhou Xiaoshuan's eyes to see stars. Jiang Shui could not help but interrupt him, "Don't listen to your dad's boasting. Don't you know how good he is at making up stories?" Zhou Xiaoxian did not believe him and snorted, "Dad's bloodline must be very powerful. At least it evolved in his generation." A purple radiance flashed in the depth of her eyes. Other than Zhou Xuanji, no one else noticed it. "This girl," Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart, and his pride was written all over his face. Time passed quickly, and it was Zhou Xuanji's 79th birthday. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 79 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained, Amethyst, Weiwu Qinghong, Glorious Gold, Demonic Thousand Transformation Sword, Void Instant Kill. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. He was not interested in the two legendary swords, but he was curious about the Void Instant Kill. Just the name alone could tell that it was not simple. He immediately inherited the Void Instant Kill. After a while, he opened his eyes and sighed in amazement in his heart. Such a domineering sword technique. Transcending space and targeting the target. He could use his divine sense to lock onto the enemy at a short distance. If his blood landed on the enemy, he could transcend space and kill the enemy. This sword technique could already become a divine ability. He immediately began practicing the Void Instant Kill. It was worth mentioning that after Xiao Jinghong awakened, his talent in cultivation exploded, which made the two 10,000-year princes feel a sense of danger. Zhou Xuanji no longer sent him out on missions, just in case. He turned to look at Su Yang. Su Yang was also the reincarnation of a powerful cultivator. Would he surprise him? But this guy was always mischievous. Could he be like Bai Haoisen? After reaching 79 years old, Zhou Xuanji continued to stay at Skyfall, cultivating and teaching disciples in peace. Occasionally, the Heavenly Hall's soldiers would come out to commit crimes, but powerful cultivators from other factions could stop them. Not all the people from the Heavenly Hall were powerful. The Heavenly Guards were considered high-ranking among the Heavenly Hall's soldiers. Not all the Heavenly Hall's soldiers ascended to the Heavenly Hall. There were natives in the upper realm, and they could not be powerful from the moment they landed. After the great calamity in the human realm, Emperor Sword Court Skyfall Net was restored. The disciples continued to accept missions and entered the world to train. Not only them, but the other sects also did the same. The northern wilderness region's vitality began to recover. But after the calamity, the human race's population plummeted, and every region was still deserted. It would take at least a decade for the human race to return to its peak. This day. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly sounded out from the east. Even Skyfall trembled because of it. Everyone turned to look. Zhou Xuanji stood at the edge of the cliff and squinted. He could see a gigantic wave that was thousands of meters tall, as though it was going to swallow the mountains. A demonic might shook the ocean. Even though he was far away, he could still sense it. The ocean in the east. A gigantic wave swept toward the land. If one looked down from above, one could see that the waves were connected, forming a gigantic circle. It was as though a giant had stepped on it, creating a huge splash. Chapter 4:10. Behind the huge wave, Xiao Hongjun floated in the air, surrounded by countless blood bats. She looked down. A bottomless abyss. The waves flowed outwards, forming this kind of abyss. Its diameter was incalculable, and so was its depth. At the bottom of the sea, a palace stood quietly. It was the Violet Demon Palace. Demon Lord Sanhai stood at the door and raised his head to look at Xiao Hongjun. With a menacing expression, he let out a deep roar. Xiao Hongjun's eyes were cold and filled with anger. She had personally descended to the mortal realm for the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Now that the northern wilderness region was isolated by the heavenly law, she could not return and could not find the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. She was in a terrible mood. This time, she planned to vacate the Violet Demon Palace and release the restrictions inside to attract the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. But she found that the Violet Demon Palace was very stable. It seems like there is something suppressed under the Violet Demon Palace. Xiao Hongjun seemed to be deep in thought. She did not stop absorbing the magical power. She was already at her wit's end, so she didn't care about the flood. Boom! A figure broke through the waves. It was the heavenly schemer. He came in front of Xiao Hongjun and frowned. "What are you doing?" Xiao Hongjun ignored him. The two of them could be said to be in the same boat. They couldn't even find the target they were looking for, so they were all very depressed. "You and I are in a very dangerous situation, so don't do anything rash. Zhou Xuanji, Devil Emperor Dugu, Marquis, and Great Emperor Heartless might all be looking for us," Lord of Heavenly Schemer said with a frown as his right hand gripped the folding fan tightly. Ever since he saw the majestic scene of Zhou Xuanji breaking the sky with a single sword strike, he had been feeling very uneasy. Because he understood that he was no match for Zhou Xuanji now. Xiao Hongjun laughed disdainfully, "So what? You might be afraid, but I'm not." With that, she continued to raise the Violet Demon Palace. Rumble, the Violet Demon Palace trembled and seemed to be about to leave the ground. Lord of Heaven Schemer's expression was ugly, and his eyes flashed with anger. "This woman is really stupid." He immediately turned around and left. Devil Emperor Dugu arrived not long after he left. Devil Emperor Dugu was clad in a black robe embroidered with dragons. His figure was domineering, and his face was dignified. He looked like a supreme emperor who controlled the life and death of all living beings in the world. "Xiao Hongjun, this is the northern wilderness region. If you continue to act recklessly, I won't go easy on you. Your father can't control this." Devil Emperor Dugu said coldly with killing intent in his eyes. Xiao Hongjun was beautiful, but if she angered him, he would not show any mercy. There were many women who had died in his hands. Xiao Hongjun glanced at him and said disdainfully, "A worm defeated by the divine cliff dares to be so arrogant? When you knelt before my father to seek knowledge, were you ever this arrogant?" The corner of Devil Emperor Dugu's mouth curled up. Without a word, he made his move. He waved his right palm, and the demonic chi turned into a huge demonic claw that blotted out the sky and smashed toward Xiao Hongjun. Xiao Hongjun attacked as well. The surrounding blood bats shrieked as they grew larger and collided with the demonic claws. A great battle had officially broken out. Meanwhile, at the top of a massive wave, Zhou Xuanji stood in the air and looked at the Violet Demon Palace. The closer he got to Violet Demon Palace, the more he could feel Demon Marshal Sanhai's emotions. It was angry and begging him for help. Zhou Xuanji's body shook and came to the top of Violet Demon Palace. His feet landed on the ground, and the Violet Demon Palace once again landed firmly on the ground. Xiao Hongjun, who was fighting with Devil Emperor Dugu, suddenly looked back at Zhou Xuanji with a savage expression and a murderous aura. This guy dared to stop her. With a loud cry, a long saber that was 15 meters long appeared in her hand. Compared to her body size, it was extremely exaggerated. The blade was half a meter wide, and it looked like a blood-red fang at first glance. All ghosts, listen to my command. She held the saber with both hands and roared softly. Devil Emperor Dugu's eyelids twitched. He waved his sleeves, and the demonic chi turned into a tornado that wrapped around his body. Boom! A bloody hole with a diameter of a few thousand meters appeared in the sky suddenly. Lightning intertwined, and the sky darkened instantly. Zhou Xuanji looked up and was shocked in his heart. This move was very similar to his Hades god-slaying formation. Countless blood ghosts charged out from the bloody hole like an army of locusts. They covered the sky and ground with great momentum. Each of them had a sharp weapon in their hand, and they rained down like a bloody storm. Xiao Hongjun charged toward Zhou Xuanji with her saber. Zhou Xuanji activated the primordial chaos sword shadow. Millions of sword shadows soared up and blocked her attack instantly. He already had the cultivation of a seventh tribulation scattered immortal. Even if he did not borrow the power of the world, he could still defeat all great tribulation scattered immortals. His black robe fluttered, and Zhou Xuanji's smile was so condescending that Xiao Hongjun almost exploded in anger. A mere mortal dared to mock her. She immediately unleashed her full power. Her entire body was enveloped in blood qi. At first glance, she seemed to have turned into a gigantic bloodbath. She broke through the countless sword shadows and headed straight for Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji raised his hand, and the dog-culling sword appeared in his hand. Sky-dominating divine sword soul. Sword light flashed. Puff! Xiao Hongjun spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. He quickly fell into the huge wave, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Zhou Xuanji had used the power of the heavens and earth in this strike, but it did not shatter her body, which made him feel quite surprised. Devil Emperor Dugu was still fighting with the Blood Ghost army. Zhou Xuanji did not help but look down instead. He could feel a terrifying presence hidden under the Violet Demon Palace. It seemed to be suppressing something. He immediately used his divine telekinesis to scan the underground of the Violet Demon Palace. It was a terrifying darkness. In the depths of the darkness, there was a pair of blood-red eyes, filled with resentment and anger. He retracted his divine sense and muttered to himself, "What was that? Although his aura is weak, it gives me a sense of danger." He did not make a move. To him, he needed to leave the northern wilderness region in danger. The growth of an expert did not depend on bitter cultivation. The Great Tribulation was also an important factor. He would let this existence live. If he threatened the northern wilderness region in the future, he would let the future generations deal with him. Zhou Xuanji, you and I are absolutely irreconcilable. Just you wait. Xiao Hongjun's voice resounded across the heavens and earth, but she was nowhere to be seen. Zhou Xuanji did not take it to heart. Xiao Hongjun could not threaten him, unless the power behind her could descend upon the northern wilderness region. A while later, Devil Emperor Dugu dealt with the Blood Ghost army and landed before Zhou Xuanji. I feel that it's very difficult for me to take another step forward. Zhou Xuanji spoke first. Ever since the Great Tribulation, he had been cultivating, but it was very difficult for him to progress further. The spiritual qi in the world was already very weak to him. Devil Emperor Dugu nodded and said, "Of course. Or else, why would so many people ascend? The spiritual qi in the mortal realm is lower than in the upper realm." Back then, Lu Wuji only ascended after reaching seventh tribulation scattered immortal. You are about the same as him, standing at the pinnacle of the ascension stage. If you ascend now and pass the ascension tribulation, you will at least attain the cultivation of a third revolution golden immortal. This was ascension, like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. Zhou Xuanji muttered, I want to ascend. If this continues, I might not surpass Great Tribulation scattered immortal in 50,000 years. Devil Emperor Dugu pondered with a frown. A while later. Go ahead, he said, I will take care of Emperor Sword Court. The northern wilderness region was isolated by the heavenly law and could not ascend. But he believed that Zhou Xuanji had other ways, or else he would not have mentioned this. Chapter 411. After saying goodbye to Devil Emperor Dugu, Zhou Xuanji entered the Violet Demon Palace alone. Demon Lord Sanhai followed behind him like a servant. When he came to Violet Demon Palace, he had not observed it carefully. This time, he wanted to understand the Violet Demon Palace. He took out the ancient god sword, and the souls of the 9 great beings appeared. Why did you come back? Emperor Hanlin asked. The moment he said it, he regretted it. Now, Zhou Xuanji was invincible in the human world. The northern wilderness region was so vast that he could go wherever he wanted. Zhou Xuanji told them about Xiao Hongjun, causing the souls to discuss among themselves. TSK, as expected, someone is looking for the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. This is a creation of heaven and earth. You must not expose it. The Violet Yao Palace is also a magic treasure. You can accept it, but it won't be of much use to you. Besides, there is a fiendish being suppressed beneath the Violet Yao Palace. That is an existence that even Grand Emperor Wu Wang would have a headache over. What evil creature? Dark North Royal Tao Tai. Zhou Xuanji listened to their conversation as he walked. Soon, he understood the identity of the being suppressed below. The Dark North Royal Tao was an ancient evil creature that had once slaughtered the northern wilderness region and beyond. It had been suppressed by Great Emperor Wu Wang and 100 demon kings. Zhou Xuanji had heard of this evil creature before. It often appeared in many legends and represented inauspiciousness and massacre. According to the soul of the great being, the Dark North Royal Tao was indestructible. Even if it was killed, it would be reborn. This was also the reason why Great Emperor Wu Wang had suppressed it. After that, Zhou Xuanji turned his attention to the Violet Demon Palace. Violet Demon Palace had hundreds of side halls, thousands of rooms, and many treasures were hidden there. To him, these treasures were not important treasures, but he wanted to obtain some ancient information. He released old Mother Wan Yi's soul. She was quite a pitiful person, but she had already become an evil being. Zhou Xuanji decided to leave her in the Violet Demon Palace. After he ascended and left the northern wilderness region, if old Mother Wan Yi followed him, she would definitely die. 3 days later. Zhou Xuanji left the Violet Demon Palace. He had collected many ancient books in the Violet Demon Palace, and he stored them all in the supreme storage. Perhaps he could use them in the future. The ocean had recovered and the Violet Demon Palace continued to sink to the bottom of the sea. After returning to Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji gathered everyone and told them that he wanted to ascend. He did not intend to ascend now. Instead, he wanted to spend time nurturing his disciples, and when Emperor Sword Court was strong enough, he would ascend. In the past, he said that he would bring everyone along to ascend, but now he had to go back on his words. Since he could not ascend in the northern wilderness region, he planned to head to the underworld before ascending to the other mortal realms. Everyone had already guessed that he was going to ascend, so they did not have any objections. The little black snake flicked its tongue and chuckled, "You're actually willing to part with your wife, right?" Jiang Shui smiled proudly, and the others followed suit. Zhou Xiaoxian called out, "Hey, what about me?" Zhou Xuanji ignored her, and Jiang Shui only smiled and patted his head. Northern Sword Valiant laughed, "Don't you have any self-awareness?" Zhou Xiaoxian felt sad. After knowing that Zhou Xuanji was going to ascend, everyone worked even harder on their cultivation. Spring passed and autumn came. 10 years passed. Zhou Xuanji reached 89 years old. 10 years had passed, and many geniuses had appeared in Emperor Sword Court. It was even more so in the northern wilderness region. Chen Bantian, Meng Tianlang, and Xiao Jinghong had all broken through to the Mahayana realm. The 10,000-year princes and the descendants of the demonic emperor bloodline were indeed powerful. Lin Chang'e had already begun to break through to the Great Tribulation scattered immortal stage, while Ning Zifeng was almost there. Zhao Congjian was working hard at the spirit refinement stage. Even the weakest northern sword valiant had reached astral infant level 5. Jiang Shui's talent was no weaker than Lin Chang'e's and Ning Zifeng's. With the help of the colorful celestial fruit, she broke through to the Great Realization stage too. Huang Lianxin and Zhao Congjian's cultivation stage were similar, which hurt Zhao Congjian greatly. Han Shenbua was only slightly stronger than Zhao Congjian. Chongming Demon Monarch was already an 8th-rank great demon. He was lazy and easily slacked off. But the little black snake worked hard to catch up and had already reached the 7th rank. The second-generation disciples had already reached the astral infant stage, and some had even reached the spirit refinement stage. They were all 1 in a million geniuses in the sword's way. Their overall talent surpassed the third-generation disciples, so naturally, they were not weak. The third-generation disciples were mostly at the inner pellet stage, which was already quite good. In these 10 years, Emperor Sword Court's disciples traveled the world and made a name for themselves. Together with the Sword Emperor, Emperor Sword Court was recognized as the most powerful faction in the northern wilderness region. It was just that their foundation was weaker than the sanctums. Zhou Xiaoshuan's cultivation reached astral infant level 7. She often left the mountain to train and earned the title of Myriad Swords Fairy. Zhou Xuanji taught her the primordial chaos sword shadow. Although she had not reached great accomplishment, she could already create hundreds of sword shadows. Moreover, her father was the world's top cultivator, so the world gave her such an exaggerated title. She was quite proud of this. This day, a guest came to Skyfall. Marquis. This guy was no longer in the form of a shadow but a real person. He wore a red shirt with green threads. He was tall and handsome, and he looked like he was in his early 30s. Zhou Xuanji received him, and Zhou Xiaoxian sized him up curiously. Was this the mighty Marquis of ancient times? It's been more than a decade. Why did you come to me today? Zhou Xuanji poured him a cup of wine and asked with a smile. Marquis swirled the wine cup and said, "It's time for you to ascend." Worry was written all over his face, and he seemed to have a lot on his mind. Why? Zhou Xuanji asked. Zhou Xiaoxian, on the other hand, became excited. Could another great tribulation be coming? Marquis replied honestly. It turned out that his original body appeared in his dream and told him that many true gods were searching for the northern wilderness region. Once they found it, the true gods would destroy the northern wilderness region straightaway. At that time, Zhou Xuanji would not be facing great tribulation scattered immortals but true gods who were not restricted by the heavenly law. No matter how talented he was, he could not withstand a palm strike from a true god. Zhou Xuanji could not help but remember the mysterious powerful cultivator who almost killed him with a palm strike when he returned from the netherworld. Could that person be a true god too? It's not convenient for my original body to confront the true gods. Devil Emperor Dugu offended the divine cliff, so the northern wilderness region can only rely on you. Marquis said solemnly. Zhou Xuanji was disgusted by this. Your original body is not convenient, so you push the trouble to me? He suddenly felt that Marquis was a hypocrite. Marquis sensed his displeasure and explained, "My original body is in isolation above the 36th heaven. There are even more powerful beings watching over him. At his cultivation level, he might be in isolation for tens of thousands of years. Zhou Xuanji's mood improved a little. He said, "After I leave, how will I know when the northern wilderness region will be in danger?" Marquis took out a white jade pendant and said, "This is a spirit communication heart. If you want to understand the situation in the northern wilderness region, you can use it. Remember, you cannot lose this jade pendant, or else the enemy might use it to find the northern wilderness region." Zhou Xuanji took the jade pendant and agreed. After Marquis left, he gathered the elders together. This matter was extremely important. Emperor Sword Court's millions of disciples were in the northern wilderness region and could not leave. He had to become more powerful. Dao Seeker suddenly appeared and said, "Don't ascend." He looked anxious, and everyone looked at him. Chapter 4:12. Why? You're afraid that after Zhou Xuanji leaves, no one will protect the northern wilderness region? Daoya old man asked mockingly, and the others laughed in disdain. Tribulation executives looked powerful, but they were actually useless. They even suspected that Dao Seeker and the man in the woven rush raincoat had some unspeakable secrets. Dao Seeker ignored everyone and stared at Zhou Xuanji. "You defeated so many heavenly law puppets," he said. "I'm afraid that the ancestors are already holding a grudge against you. If you ascend, you will be in great danger. Many enemies might be waiting for you to ascend." The group heard him and fell into deep thought. The more powerful one's cultivation was, the more they cared about their reputation. Although Zhou Xuanji did it to protect the northern wilderness humans, he did humiliate so many ancestors. Putting themselves in their shoes, they would not feel uncomfortable about it, but they would not hold a grudge against him. The little black snake cried out, "Are they that petty?" Dao Seeker sighed, "One must always be on guard against others." He had seen countless powerful cultivators and knew that some of them were petty. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and said, "I will die even if I stay. Why not take the risk?" Dao Seeker wanted to say more, but seeing how determined Zhou Xuanji was, he could only give up. But Zhou Xuanji remembered his words in his heart. What Zhou Xuanji could think of, those powerful cultivators could think of too. After Dao Seeker left, Zhou Xuanji held Jiang Shue's hand and said, "Come with me." He said that he must bring Jiang Shui along no matter where he went. He was worried about her staying in the northern wilderness region. Zhou Xiaoxian opened her eyes wide and cried out, "Hey, Dad, what about me?" Zhou Xuanji said unpleasantly, "Get lost." Zhou Xiaoxian was furious and stomped her feet. She grabbed the little black snake and dashed to a nearby tree. She whipped the tree to vent her frustration. "I won't follow you so that I won't be a burden to you. I'll stay and look after Emperor Sword Court for you," Jiang Shui said as she shook her head. She felt warmth in her heart. No matter how long it had been, he would always think of her first. She was very regretful and reluctant to leave. It had been 10 years. She had been working hard to catch up to Zhou Xuanji, but the time was too short. Zhou Xuanji said, "I can ask Magistrate Chui to give you a great spirit pill to help you increase your cultivation." The beauty in front of him was the person closest to him, and no one in the world could compare to her. He didn't know how long it would take for him to return, so he naturally wanted to bring her along. Jiang Shui pinched his face and smiled. "If I follow you, I will definitely become a burden to you. When my cultivation level increases, I will ascend alone. At that time, the upper realm won't know about our relationship, so you won't have so much trouble." Zhou Xuanji threw her a stare and snorted, "I won't allow you to ascend alone. Either you come with me, or you stay at Skyfall and wait for me to come back for you to ascend." Jiang Shui smiled sweetly. The others tactfully left, leaving them alone. Daoya old man put his hands behind his back, shook his head, and sighed. It's just love. He remembered that dusk that year, he also had a beautiful woman by his side. Unfortunately, she had already turned into dust. Zhou Xuanji spent 3 days making arrangements for his funeral. That night, he took advantage of the darkness to leave. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, he arrived at a desolate plain. He directly used the 9 underworlds flame extinction, created a yin-yang boundary, and entered it. He quickly disappeared into the darkness. After he left, Xian Daoya suddenly appeared at the edge of the black hole and looked down. His face was cold and stern, without the frivolous smile he had before. Zhou Xuanji, who are you? With the fate I gave you, you could not have reached such a devilish stage. Where did your swords come from? It seems like you are no longer a pure chess piece, he mumbled to himself. His eyes flickered with a sinister aura. After that, he leaped into the yin-yang boundary. After passing through the boundless darkness, Zhou Xuanji felt the world spinning. When he opened his eyes again, he landed. After becoming a great emperor, he could already withstand the pressure of traveling between the yin and yang. The netherworld was still as dark and lifeless as before. Everywhere was eerie and horrifying. He flew toward the magistrate palace straightaway. Along the way, he met many impermanences, who looked at him with admiration. So many people died in the northern wilderness region. Through the souls, they understood Zhou Xuanji's prowess and achievements. It was not an exaggeration to say that Zhou Xuanji surpassed both ancient and modern times. Half an hour later, Zhou Xuanji came to the magistrate palace and did not stop him. After entering, he saw Magistrate Cui, who was busy. At this moment, 2 impermanences were escorting 6 ghosts, telling them about the good and evil they had done in their lives. When Zhou Xuanji came in, they looked back. The 6 ghosts became excited immediately. Sword Emperor. Could it be that the Sword Emperor is here to save us? Bulsh *T, coming down to the netherworld to save us? Who do you think we are? Could it be that he died too? Impossible. The Sword Emperor was invincible throughout his life. It's impossible for him to die. Zhou Xuanji was quite amused. He had met 6 fanboys. He walked past the impermanences and came to the magistrate palace. Magistrate, long time no see, he said with a smile. Magistrate Cui said with a smile, not really. But your power makes me feel like I'm reunited with you after a long time. The 6 ghosts opened their eyes wide in shock. Awesome. The Sword Emperor knew Magistrate Cui. Judging from their conversation, their relationship was not shallow. Eating both the yin and yang realms? Zhou Xuanji walked to the side and said, "You handle this first. I need your help." Magistrate Cui nodded, and the 6 ghosts admired him even more. It was incredible that he could ask Magistrate Cui for help. Immediately, they were no longer fearful but excited. With the Sword Emperor beside them, they did not dare to embarrass themselves. All of them puffed out their chests and raised their heads proudly. Finally, they were taken away by the 2 impermanences with arrogant faces. Zhou Xuanji explained his purpose of coming. He wanted to ascend to another mortal realm. As for going to the upper realm directly, he did not even think about it. Because the ascension tribulation was between the upper realm and the mortal realm, he did not want to miss the opportunity to grow tremendously. Magistrate Cui put down his brush and said intently, "Recently, many people want to go to the northern wilderness region through the netherworld. If I send you out, you will be easily exposed. How about this, I will let you reincarnate. Don't you have a rebirth energy technique that can recover your cultivation in a short time?" Zhou Xuanji asked with narrowed eyes, "How do you know?" At the same time, he was shocked in his heart. So many powerful cultivators wanted to enter the netherworld but did not succeed. This meant that Magistrate Cui was very powerful. Magistrate Cui waved his right hand, and Xian Xianghua appeared in the palace suddenly. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes wide and said in astonishment, why are you here? Xian Xianghua curled her lip and said, I want to ascend too. We have the same idea. The celestial devil rebirth technique could preserve one's original bloodline and even make it purer. After each rebirth, one's talent would grow stronger and stronger. As for the original body, it would turn into ashes quickly without leaving any trace. This energy technique was extremely domineering. Zhou Xuanji had already reached the 4th level, and he had 3 more rebirths. If not for her relationship with you, I might have already sent her to the 18th level of hell. Magistrate Chui chuckled. He looked forward to Zhou Xuanji more and more, so he did him a favor. Zhou Xuanji expressed his gratitude first before chatting with Xian Xianghua. The two decided to ascend to different mortal realms. Zhou Xuanji had too much hatred for her after all, and he did not want to implicate her. Xian Xianghua understood that she would only be a burden if she followed him. An hour later, under Magistrate Chui's lead, they came to the Bridge of Helplessness. Chapter 4:13. The Bridge of Helplessness was situated above the Yellow Springs. The waters of the Yellow Springs were turbid, and in the dusky world of thunderclouds, it was like a boundless black sea. It was Zhou Xuanji's first time coming to the Bridge of Helplessness. He was very curious, and he continuously scanned his surroundings with his divine sense. Xian Xianghua was also very curious and looked around. Magistrate Chui walked to the front and suddenly stopped. He turned around and said with a smile, "Which one of you will go down first? I will use my arcane energy to protect your corporeal body so that you won't be attacked by the reincarnation force. When your bodies are about to give out, you can use the celestial devil rebirth technique." Xian Xianghua and Zhou Xuanji looked at each other. She took a step forward and walked to the side of the bridge. The Bridge of Helplessness was a stone bridge that even mortals could jump off easily. Xian Xianghua looked back at Zhou Xuanji. Her eyes were filled with tenderness, reluctance, and expectation. "When we reach the upper realm, I will look for you," she said softly, her tone firm. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "Wait for me to find you. When I'm powerful enough, I will find you. Of course, if you are in danger, you can ask me for help." Xian Xianghua rolled her eyes at him and said coquettishly, "Don't expect me to save you when the time comes." After that, she jumped into the Yellow Springs without hesitation. Magistrate Chui immediately began to cast the spell. Zhou Xuanji waited quietly, but in his heart, he was imagining what the upper realm would be like. In these 10 years, he had obtained another 17 divine swords. The highest was only at the heavenly soul level, while the lowest was at the amethyst level. To him, they weren't considered very strong, but they weren't considered weak either. His overall strength did not improve much. Hopefully, the ascension wouldn't disappoint him. Magistrate Chui turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and said, "You have offended too many people. After you reach the upper realm, you better go and find the 18 swords of the divine way." 18 swords of the saint way? Zhou Xuanji looked curious. What was that? The 18 divine swords are the 18 divine swords of the upper realm at the beginning of the world's creation. Each of them contains the power to split the heavens and the earth, and they are fought over by countless sword immortals. If you can get your hands on one of them, you will be able to do whatever you want and not be afraid of the true gods. Although your talent is strong, the enemy won't give you too much time. The holy sword can help you grow stronger quickly. That's all I can help you with. Magistrate Chui introduced, his eyes full of expectation. Zhou Xuanji's situation seemed to be a dead end, but if he could survive it, it was hard to imagine how great his future achievements would be. "If I manage to ascend to the heavens in the future, I will not let you down," Zhou Xuanji said as he lightly laughed. He seemed to be joking, but Magistrate Chui could sense his sincerity. After that, Magistrate Chui gave him a few more instructions before letting him jump into the Yellow Spring. After entering the Yellow Springs, Zhou Xuanji felt as if he was traversing between the yin and yang. It was pitch black all around him, and he could not even see his fingers. Even his senses and divine sense were rendered useless. Very quickly, he felt a strong magical power wrap around him, causing him to sink rapidly. Zhou Xuanji was a little nervous. After all, it was his first time reincarnating while maintaining his consciousness. Not long after, a terrifying force came, wanting to tear his body apart. He immediately used the Celestial Devil Rebirth technique and began his rebirth. After successfully circulating his energy, he lost consciousness. The Bridge of Helplessness. Magistrate Chui gazed at the Yellow Spring for a long time and didn't leave. After an unknown period of time, a figure walked over from the other end of the Bridge of Helplessness. It was Xian Daoya. He walked to the side of Magistrate Chui and looked at the surging Yellow Spring side by side with him. How is it? Can you divine his true background? Xian Daoya asked with a solemn expression. He changed Zhou Xuanji's fate personally, but he lost control in less than 100 years. This made him feel uneasy. I can't divine it, Magistrate Chui replied calmly. Xian Daoya glanced at him and laughed coldly. Why? Are you moved? Let me give you a piece of advice. Look at your position clearly. Magistrate Chui was not enraged. He turned around and left. Xian Daoya continued, the 9th Nether Buddha isn't here. Grasp this opportunity well. As long as Zhou Xuanji becomes a true god or even surpasses true god, he will help you soar. I hope you can help him as much as you can and satisfy all of his requests. Don't tell anyone about us. After that, he disappeared into thin air. Magistrate Chui did not stop. He walked ahead with his head lowered, and his face turned grim. Xian Daoya, although I don't know what you want, do you really think you can do whatever you want? You miscalculated one step, and that is Zhou Xuanji's will. A chess piece can also retaliate against its player. He smiled as he thought in his heart. Sunlight shone on his face, and Zhou Xuanji felt warmth on his face. He opened his eyes slowly and realized that he was lying on the grass. Behind him was a slope, so he could see the majestic mountains and rivers in front of him just by looking down slightly. At this moment, he had already turned into a baby. Naked, he enjoyed the gentle breeze. The spiritual qi here is not bad. It's almost as good as the foot of Skyfall. He thought to himself as he spread out his divine sense. Soon, he saw a white snake charging toward him. The white snake was very thin and as thick as his arm. Demonic qi? Wow, it has the cultivation of 7th rank. Zhou Xuanji thought to himself curiously. It was hard for anyone to associate such a small snake with a 7th rank demon. The white snake came up to him and arched its body. It flicked its forked tongue at him and sized him up with its clear and lively eyes. He immediately put his acting skills to good use and cried. The white snake wrapped its body around his body. A cold female voice came from its mouth, a genius from the heavens. Little guy, where did you come from? After that, it dragged Zhou Xuanji away. From beginning to end, Zhou Xuanji did not resist. If the white snake wanted to kill him, he could kill it instantly. A 7th rank demon could not even withstand his divine sense. An hour later, the white snake brought him to a cave. There were many bones in the cave, all of which belonged to wild beasts and demons. There was also a small lake in the depths of the cave. After the white snake put him down, it walked toward the small lake and began drinking water. Zhou Xuanji was curious. What was the white snake going to do to him? After becoming a great emperor, he only needed 2 years to recover to his peak state. Bai Hao Yisan seemed to have mastered a similar divine ability. Every time he self-destructed, he could quickly recover his great tribulation scattered immortal cultivation. And so, Zhou Xuanji pretended to be an ordinary baby. The white snake did not harm him and spent most of its time cultivating. It even channeled spiritual qi into his body to ensure his vitality. Occasionally, it would go out to hunt. Day after day. A month had passed. Zhou Xuanji's body grew a lot and could already walk on the ground. He pretended to be ignorant, which made the white snake love him even more. He sensed that the white snake had no ill intentions toward him, so he was happy to continue pretending. If the white snake did not harm him before he ascended, he would not mind rewarding it with serendipity. Spring passed and autumn came. Half a year had passed. Zhou Xuanji reached 90 years old. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 90 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained, Intimidating Spirit, Immortal Disruption Sword, a bottle of age-halting pills, and a dragon essence pill. Zhou Xuanji, who was sleeping, opened his sleepy eyes. Chapter 4:14. Sword Name, Immortal Chaotic Stellar Sword Grade, Intimidating Spirit, Description, created by the Heaven and Earth Astral Flame. It contains the power to disrupt the will of the immortal god. The effect is related to the enemy's cultivation level. Disturb the immortal god will? Could he do it with just the Intimidating Spirit sword? Zhou Xuanji was a little doubtful, but after thinking about it, the Intimidating Spirit legendary sword was not weak. It was impossible for immortals and gods to be very strong. He grinned, rolled over, and went back to sleep. He had drawn more than 10 bottles of age-retaining pills, most of which he had given to Zhou Xiaoxian. As for dragon essence pills, he had drawn them before. The true dragon yuan was suitable for cultivation. If the snake species swallowed it, there was a chance that it would transform into a dragon. He glanced at the white snake who was breathing not far away and wondered if he should give it the dragon essence pill. Forget it, let's continue watching its performance. Ever since he was reborn into this mortal world, he had never cultivated. Every day, he would doze off and comprehend the power of heaven and earth. Occasionally, powerful monsters would attack the cave, but they were all dealt with by the white snake. He looked about 5 or 6 years old and was wearing clothes made of animal skin. The white snake was very surprised by his growth, but seeing that he was harmless, she was not afraid. Time continued to pass. 3 months later. He was woken up by the white snake. He looked at the white snake with resentment and an unhappy expression. The white snake blinked her pure eyes and asked, "Are you from the upper realm?" Zhou Xuanji was stunned. It said to itself, "Stop pretending. You're not immortal. Although you don't cultivate, you're very strong. If we fight, I'll be the one to die. I mean no harm. I'm actually from the upper realm too." It began to talk endlessly, making Zhou Xuanji stupefied. Holy shit. So the one who pretended to be a pig to eat the tiger wasn't me, but you. The white snake came from the upper realm and belonged to the 9 heavens divine snake clan. They fed on dragons and phoenixes and were extremely powerful. The 9 heavens godly snakes had 9 chances to undergo nirvana, which was similar to the celestial devil rebirth art. Every time they underwent nirvana, they would be sent to the mortal world by the elders of their race. This was because they were at their weakest during nirvana, and the mortal world was the safest. This white snake's name was Baisoan. This was her first time descending to the mortal world to transform. It had sharp senses and could sense that Zhou Xuanji's aura did not belong to this world. After spending more than half a year with Zhou Xuanji, it had grown to like Zhou Xuanji a lot. This time, it could not help but tell the truth. "Your name is Baisoan. What's your relationship with Baisuzhen?" Zhou Xuanji asked with his eyes wide open. As for the 9 heaven divine snake, it was his first time hearing that it ate dragons and phoenixes. What a braggart. He couldn't help but think even more. Why was the place of his rebirth so close to Bai Suan? Could it be that Magistrate Chui had deliberately arranged this? Bai Suan blinked her eyes and said, I have an elder sister called Bai Suzhen. How did you know? Zhou Xuanji asked closely, your brother-in-law is called Su Xian? Bai Suan glared at him and said snappily, my sister is only a few years older than me. What brother-in-law? But my seventh sister, Bai Susu, is already married. Zhou Xuanji was confused. So many Bai Su? Could Bai Su be the same surname? He started asking all kinds of questions. Bai Suan told him everything she knew. She looked very innocent. Bai Suan was also very interested in him and asked where he came from. Zhou Xuanji lied that he came from Earth and was a cultivator during the Age of Chaos. Earth was not suitable for ascension, so he brought the hopes of the entire world to shatter the void and reincarnate into another mortal realm to ascend. Hearing that he was going to ascend, Bai Suan was excited. Little Xuanji, why don't you ascend with me? We, the 9 heaven divine snake, have to go through the tribulation of ascension every time after nirvana. I'm afraid. Come with me, she said excitedly. After spending so much time with Zhou Xuanji and watching him grow up, she had already treated him as a younger brother. As for why she was not a son? Because her mental age was very young and did not understand maternal love. Is the 9 heaven divine snake clan very powerful? Is it as powerful as the true gods? Is it as powerful as the heavenly hall? Zhou Xuanji asked with curled lips. He did not want to ascend with a burden. Bai Suan opened her snake eyes wide and said, true gods? There are many true gods in my race, all right? My father and my mother are both true gods. As for the Sky Palace, I seem to have seen a sage something pay a visit to my race in the past. During that period of time, he mentioned the 2 words Sky Palace. This time, it was Zhou Xuanji's turn to open his eyes wide. So awesome? He rolled his eyes and chuckled, then we will be friends from now on. What do you think? Bai Suan rolled her eyes at him and snorted, what friend? You are my younger brother. I'm the one who raised you. Why? Did the heavenly hall offend you? If you follow me from now on, the heavenly hall will be nothing. She raised her snake head proudly, as though her life was higher than the sky. Zhou Xuanji was not sure if it was because of the halo or something else, but he suddenly felt that the snake scales on her body were so beautiful and as bright as crystals. Your clan background is not important. I acknowledge you as my friend because of your character. And so, Zhou Xuanji and Bai Suan became even closer. He began to guide Bai Suan in her cultivation, which made her progress tremendously. She was overjoyed and liked him even more. The man and the snake rarely left the cave. To prevent any accidents, Zhou Xuanji decided to hide first, in case there were other powerful people hiding in this mortal realm. A year later. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 91 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained, God-slaying, Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes, which were filled with surprise. The second God-slaying legendary sword. Next, the legendary sword's information appeared before his eyes, sword name, Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss grade, God-slaying description, a sword that was fused with the body of the Ghost Emperor. It absorbed countless ghosts and opened up the Extreme Abyss. The Extreme Abyss can absorb ghosts and souls. During battle, the souls of ghosts and souls will fuse together to serve the sword owner. One must reach Second Revolution Golden Immortal to use this sword. Second Revolution Golden Immortal. Zhou Xuanji was even more surprised. This meant that the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss was more powerful than the 9-flame Chimera Demon Sword. He noticed something. Extreme Abyss. Which meant that this sword was the same as the Furious Ape Sword. It could grow infinitely more powerful as long as it absorbed enough ghosts. He was in a good mood. After he ascended, he could use this sword. He turned around and glanced at Baisoen, who was still cultivating by the lake. She looked like the little black snake. Her body was only a meter long, which was very small compared to other demonic snakes. Zhou Xuanji looked like he was already 13 or 14 years old, but Baisoen still maintained her appearance, which confused him. After that, he continued to sleep. When he reached the upper realm, he could not even sleep. Even if it was late at night, he had to stay alert. Half a year later, Zhou Xuanji and Baisoen walked out of the cave and were ready to ascend. He had already recovered his cultivation and was ready to ascend in a secluded place. Baisoen was the same. She did not ascend because she was afraid. Finally, she waited for him. The two of them flew toward the same direction. 12 hours later, they came to a barren land. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, not even a blade of grass grew. There was not even a demon, let alone a human. Zhou Xuanji stood in the air and began channeling his magic energy. He was already a first-class great emperor. As long as he had a strong desire to ascend, the heavenly law would sense it. Boom! Thunderclouds gathered, and a violent gale swept across the land. Baisoen was so frightened that she held on to Zhou Xuanji's arm tightly. Chapter 4:15. How can you go through the tribulation if you cling to me like this? Zhou Xuanji stared at Baisoen and wanted to pull it off. But no matter how hard he tried, he could not pull it off. He could not use his full power, or he would tear it into pieces. I'm scared. Baisoen cried out. She clung onto his arm tightly and refused to let go. Zhou Xuanji was helpless. He could only go through the tribulation like this. He took out the thunderclap sword and held it above his head. The thunderclouds rolled violently and covered the entire sky as though they were going to press down on the ground. A massive heavenly might engulfed the vast wasteland. Thunder rumbled and shook the ground, which made Baisoen shiver in fear. The thunderclouds parted, and a majestic thunderclap Buddha statue appeared. It was thousands of meters tall and looked even more sacred than the sun. Seeing the thunderclap Buddha statue, Baisoen opened her snake eyes wide, and her snake body stiffened immediately. She was scared silly. Zhou Xuanji laughed in his heart. Are you scared now? At this moment, the thunderclap Buddha statue slammed its palm toward Zhou Xuanji. Millions of lightning bolts turned into a torrent that destroyed the heavens and the earth. The thunderclap sword blocked the torrent of heavenly lightning. Even so, Zhou Xuanji and Baisoen were still struck by the heavenly lightning. Ah! Baisoen cried out miserably. Zhou Xuanji withstood it with the toughness of his body. He did not help Baisoen. This was the tribulation that she deserved. The heavenly lightning could temper her bloodline. It was a serendipity, and she should not avoid it. Of course, if she could not bear it, he would think of a way. Most of the heavenly lightning was withstood by the thunderclap sword. If it could not even withstand this, he could not help but wonder if the 9-heaven divine snake was really that powerful. Just when he was thinking about it, the dragon and phoenix formed by the heavenly lightning dashed out from the back of the Buddha statue and charged toward Zhou Xuanji and Baisoen. The Ascension Tribulation and Nirvana Tribulation came together. Zhou Xuanji's robe was burned, and his skin was charred black. Baisoen's flesh was lacerated. Their blood mixed together, and it was hard to tell whose it was. However, his self-healing speed was fast, while Baisoen was much slower. She seemed to be in great pain. Boom! 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 The ground was blasted consecutively, and countless cracks appeared. Numerous evil spirits popped up from the ground and tried to attack Zhou Xuanji and Baisoen. But they were all killed by the heavenly lightning and could not even get close. Zhou Xuanji laughed, so this was a dangerous place, a place of misfortune. Unfortunately, he wanted to ascend. Not even demons or monsters could stop him. In the distance, there were 3 people standing on top of the mountain. They wore gray robes and bamboo hats, making it impossible to identify their faces. They were tribulation executives of this realm. They had felt the might of the heavens and had come to witness this spectacular scene. What a terrifying heavenly tribulation, he's ascending. He has achieved the martial monarch realm. Wait, who is he? Why haven't I seen it before? The 3 tribulation executives were almost scared to death. They controlled everything in the mortal world, but a great emperor they didn't know suddenly ascended. How could they not panic? Zhou Xuanji was completely focused on the tribulation and did not pay attention to them. Even if he noticed it, he wouldn't care. Tribulation executive? If you can't stand it, come and hit me. After the time it takes to burn half an incense stick. The lightning Buddha descended personally and struck toward Zhou Xuanji with its palm. His imposing figure seemed to be able to sink the earth with a single palm strike. The power of the heavens collapsing was nothing more than this. Zhou Xuanji raised the thunderclap sword and slashed toward the sky. Sky dominating divine sword soul. The sword radiance brightened the heavens and earth. The lightning Buddha exploded straightaway and turned into lightning bolts that scattered across the sky. The sky turned into a web of lightning. The scene was so shocking that Baisoan and the 3 tribulation executives were tongue-tied. What kind of power is this? Zhou Xuanji followed up with world internalization and universal attraction to absorb the heavenly lightning into the thunderclap sword. Boom! A beam of light descended from the sky and enveloped him and Baisoan. In an instant, they felt a warm and comfortable sensation enveloping their bodies. Baisoan's injuries healed at a visible speed. The heavenly tribulation had yet to disperse. Heavenly lightning dragons coiled around the beam of light and charged toward them. The dragons' mouths were big enough to swallow a mountain. Zhou Xuanji raised his left hand. Shadows of the primordial chaos sword covered the sky and charged toward the lightning dragons from different directions. The lightning dragons were destroyed one after another, and the explosion sounded ceaselessly. Baisoan looked up, and her snake eyes were filled with excitement. She knew that Zhou Xuanji was powerful, but she did not expect him to be this powerful. She made the right choice to recognize this little brother. Far away. The 3 tribulation executives were silent. Zhou Xuanji's prowess shocked their knowledge. In their memory, there had never been such a powerful being in the world. Even those powerful great emperors did not have such power before they ascended. They felt that the heavenly tribulation was like child's play before Zhou Xuanji. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji and Baisoan felt a suction force pulling them upward. A wave of energy descended from the sky and entered Zhou Xuanji's body. His cultivation began to grow tremendously. Baisoan opened her snake eyes wide. Her snake body was separated from Zhou Xuanji uncontrollably, and they were 2 meters apart. The heavenly law did not allow her to share the great emperor's grace. But soon, she received the grace that belonged to her, and her cultivation began to grow tremendously. Boom! Zhou Xuanji broke through to 8th tribulation scattered immortal. His magic energy was as vast and boundless as the ocean. His divine sense grew stronger too. Or more accurately, his soul. The heavenly tribulation continued. As he grew more powerful, he underwent the tribulation at the same time. The thunderclap sword welcomed the feast and devoured the heavenly lightning crazily. When Zhou Xuanji rose to a height of 1,500 meters, he broke through to 9th tribulation scattered immortal. Baisoan became a great tribulation scattered immortal straightaway. From a 7th rank great demon to a 1st tribulation scattered immortal, Zhou Xuanji believed its words suddenly. The 9 heaven divine snake was not boasting. It was really powerful. After a few thousand meters, Zhou Xuanji broke through to First Revolution Golden Immortal forcefully. Everything in his body transformed. Analyze that the sword owner has reached Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortal. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained, Gold, Evil Scarlet Sword, Armageddon, All Evil Yin Yang Destruction. Ding! The sword owner obtained the Armageddon Legendary Sword. Updating the Legendary Sword's information. The sword spirit's voice resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, which made him open his eyes wide. What the? Armageddon! 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 He must roar 3 times in his heart. The god-slaying legendary sword was so powerful that it could even slash the heavens. How powerful would the Armageddon be? At this moment, the blood in his body began to boil. Because he was in the beam of light and his cultivation was still breaking through, he could not check the legendary sword's information. But he was not in a hurry. The thunderclap sword continued to absorb the heavenly lightning. Zhou Xuanji and Bai Suan disappeared into the clouds. The 3 tribulation executives came back to their senses and looked at each other in dismay. They could see the shock and relief in each other's eyes. They were shocked by Zhou Xuanji's power. They were glad that Zhou Xuanji had left. God bless our world. One of the tribulation executives sighed in amazement, and the other 2 nodded in agreement. After disappearing into the thunderclouds, Zhou Xuanji and Bai Suan were still ascending. The heavenly grace continued. Zhou Xuanji could sense that his magic energy was growing at a horrifying rate. Bai Suan was the same. This guy had already reached second tribulation scattered immortal. The 9 heaven divine snake's talent was really unreasonable. A roar came from above, and they looked up in shock. Above the layers of thunderclouds, a pair of eyes stared at them furiously. It was like the eyes of the heavenly law, gigantic and filled with divine might. Chapter 4:16. What's that? Bai Suan widened her snake eyes and asked in fear. Facing this pair of eyes, it felt an unprecedented fear. Zhou Xuanji did not reply. He took out the 9-flame chimera demon sword and prepared for battle. This I made him, who was already a First Revolution Golden Immortal, feel danger. This was enough to prove how powerful it was. How could the tribulation of ascension be so powerful? The heavenly Tao was unfair. Zhou Xuanji cursed in his heart. He fixed his gaze on that eye, he wanted to see what it was capable of. 2 beams of golden light suddenly shot out from the pair of huge eyes. They were so fast that even the heavenly thunder was penetrated by them. Because Bai Suan was beside him, Zhou Xuanji did not dare to be careless. He activated the sky-dominating sword soul straightaway and slashed with all his might. The sword chi soared into the sky like a pillar that supported the heavens. It rose from the ground and seemed as if it was going to pierce through the sky. Bang! The sword chi clashed with the 2 beams of golden light. A powerful radiance burst out, causing Zhou Xuanji and Bai Suan's vision to lose its color. A monstrous hurricane was set off in the mortal realm below, sweeping across the land. The 3 tribulation executives were directly swept away. The strong light dissipated, and the pair of huge eyes was cut into pieces by the sword chi. Zhou Xuanji was shocked. I'm this powerful? He was instantly excited. This was the power of a First Revolution Golden Immortal. His cultivation had not stopped growing. He could still become stronger. A certain someone said that he could reach the 3rd Revolution Golden Immortal stage, but that was unacceptable. At the very least, he had to surpass a 3rd Revolution Golden Immortal. With that thought in mind, he took a deep breath, activated his cultivation technique, and madly absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The Tianxia map was activated. As a First Revolution Golden Immortal, his ability to internalize qi was extremely terrifying. He could directly influence the entire mortal world's spiritual qi to gather towards him. Many mountains were smashed by the strong wind, and the water in the Jianghu was sent flying, forming many huge pits and valleys. Bai Suan had reached the third tribulation bodiless immortal realm, but her cultivation had not stopped growing. They continued to ascend faster and faster. Passing through the layers of clouds, they saw the magnificent sea of stars. The stars were of different brightness, dazzling and stunning. After a while, they saw the end of the light pillar. It was a light hole that seemed to lead to another world. Zhou Xuanji's cultivation broke through again. Second revolution golden immortal. There were 2 more golden patterns on his inner core, which was very mystical. His physical body was also transforming, and his strength was far greater than before. Bai Suan's cultivation began to slow down, but Zhou Xuanji was still growing faster and faster. It tilted its head to look at Zhou Xuanji, its eyes filled with shock and admiration. Too strong. Zhou Xuanji was more talented than it. Was there a race stronger than the 9 heaven divine snake clan in this world? Its innocent heart was taken over by curiosity. When Zhou Xuanji entered the light hole with it, his cultivation broke through to third revolution golden immortal. Boundless magic power. Zhou Xuanji could not help but howl at the unprecedented power. Even when he held the 9-flame chimera demon sword in his hand, he didn't have such a powerful feeling. It was simply too satisfying. The Divine Cliff. As an overlord of the Great Thousand World, the Divine Cliff controlled the 36 mortal realms. On this day, the golden bell on the ascension platform suddenly rang. 2 men in silver armor appeared on the ascension platform. They were surrounded by a boundless sea of clouds. Behind them, there was a stone staircase that led to a portal. Another person has ascended. I wonder how talented this person is. The 2 of them chatted idly. Ascension was already a common occurrence for them. Occasionally, earth-shattering geniuses would come from the mortal realm. They had seen all of them, so they naturally had high standards. However, the golden bell did not stop ringing. It continued to ring louder and louder. The 2 men's expressions turned grim. The louder the bell, the more powerful the ascender. The 2 of them waited curiously. A while later, beads of cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. The bell's ringing was like the sound of creation. It was majestic and shocking. What kind of genius could cause such an epic bell to ring? At this moment, figures walked out from the portal one after another. The leader was a middle-aged man in a green robe. He wore luxurious clothes and looked majestic. He walked up the ascension platform quickly with a deep frown. The 2 men in silver armor knelt down immediately. The green-robed man ignored them and looked down at the sea of clouds. In the billowing sea of clouds, a ball of golden radiance could be vaguely seen. The bell never stops ringing. This guy is incredible. At least 3rd-class Great Emperor? 3rd-class Great Emperor. That's a top-notch talent. Which mortal realm is this? The Divine Cliff's fate is boundless. Of course, it can give birth to countless geniuses in the mortal realm. The people behind the green-robed man began discussing. Everyone was delighted. Only the green-robed man continued to frown. With such talent, he might already be a 2nd-class Great Emperor. After hearing the last ring of the bell, he might not have reached his limit. Recently, on the Great Emperor's stele, he thought of a name and was covered in cold sweat. He immediately left to invite the Cliff Lord. Although the others were confused, they did not think too much and continued chatting. At the same time, another ball of golden radiance appeared below the ascension platform. This meant that another person was ascending. This made the Divine Cliff's cultivators even more excited. A while later, The green-robed man returned. He stood at the edge of the cliff and never relaxed his frown. "Emissary Li Qing, why are you unhappy?" An old man could not help but ask. The others also looked up at Emissary Li Qing. Emissary Li Qing sighed and said, "You must not tell anyone about what happened today." With this, everyone was shocked. He continued, "This person might have surpassed second-class Great Emperor. Recently, there were only 2 new cultivators above third-class Great Emperor on the Great Emperor Stele, and only one who surpassed second-class." Everyone's expression changed drastically. They immediately thought of a name. Zhou Xuanji. The Heavenly Hall lost contact with the Northern Wilderness region and became the laughingstock of the Great Thousand World, while Zhou Xuanji became famous. It was said that a spirit sovereign from the Heavenly Hall used the Heavenly Law Stone to create Heavenly Law puppets for all the powerful cultivators who had the potential to become Great Emperors. And Zhou Xuanji defeated 1,000 Great Emperors and Great Emperors alone, including Lu Wuji, Marquis, and the Hegemon Sword Emperor's Heavenly Law puppets. For some reason, this news had spread across the Great Thousand World. Zhou Xuanji's name was known by everyone. However, there were too many powerful cultivators who wanted to eliminate the Northern Wilderness. Because of this, Zhou Xuanji made countless enemies. If Zhou Xuanji's ascension to the Divine Cliff was exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Everyone was silent and extremely nervous. Emissary Li Qing glanced at the 2 silver-armored men beside him, and they knelt down in fear. "We will not leak this. If we dare to leak this, we will be destroyed by heaven and earth." The 2 immediately swore an oath, fearing that Emissary Li Qing would kill them. Emissary Li Qing looked away and looked down again. Zhou Xuanji was indeed a hot potato. Most factions would be terrified and would not accept him. They might even capture him to claim credit. But the Divine Cliff was different. If they could subdue Zhou Xuanji, the Divine Cliff might usher in an even more powerful peak. At the thought of this, Emissary Li Qing's heart beat faster, and his eyes were filled with anticipation. Boom! A ray of golden light pierced through the sea of clouds and rose up. Emissary Li Qing and the others were not surprised because it was not Zhou Xuanji. Judging from his aura, he was only a 4th-class Great Emperor. A 4th-class Great Emperor was actually not bad, and the Divine Cliff could nurture him. It was a pity that there was a 1st-class Great Emperor beside him, who was enough to overshadow him. Ha ha ha. This emperor is coming. Chapter 4:17. As the wild and unruly laughter faded, a burly figure leaped out of the golden light. He floated high in the sky with his arms spread out, a fascinated expression on his face. This person was nearly 2 meters tall and had a stocky build. He wore a golden chain mail and had a wild and domineering expression. His long hair was loose and he looked like a peerless divine general. Once he ascended, he directly jumped from a 5th tribulation scattered immortal to a 2nd revolution golden immortal. How could he not be excited? Soon, he saw Emissary Li Qing and the others, and he quickly landed on the ascension platform. He cupped his fists and said with a forthright smile, "Thank you for coming to welcome me. I am Wu Mingyi, a 4th-grade Great Emperor." In the mortal world where he lived, his ancestors had left behind many stories of ascension. Occasionally, immortals would descend to the mortal world, so he knew about the existence of the Divine Cliff. Emissary Li Qing nodded indifferently. The others were also very calm. Wu Mingyi was stunned. There was something wrong with his attitude. With so many people welcoming him, it should be because they valued his talent. "You too, take him away and settle him down," Emissary Li Qing instructed. The 2 silver-armored men immediately stood up and left with Wu Mingyi. Wu Mingyi was dumbfounded. The development of the plot was very different from what he had imagined. He noticed that the others looked excited. Following their gazes, he saw a golden light rising from the sea of clouds. Oh my God! So it was to welcome other people. Wu Mingyi was so embarrassed that he wished he could find a hole to hide in. With a flushed face, he followed the two silver-armored men into the portal. Under the sea of clouds, within the golden pillar of light, Zhou Xuanji and Bai Suwen quickly rose up. Bai Suwen's cultivation had stopped increasing. But Zhou Xuanji did not stop. He was already a 4th Revolution Golden Immortal and was still in the process of breaking through. Bai Suwen worshipped him to the extreme. Too amazing. It made up its mind to hold on to Zhou Xuanji tightly and not allow him to leave. Very soon, they leaped over the clouds and stopped. Zhou Xuanji saw emissary Li Qing and the others, and they also saw him. He didn't step out immediately because he was still breaking through. He had already stored the Thunderclap sword and the 9-flame Chimera Demon sword back into the supreme storage. After this calamity, the Thunderclap sword would definitely break through again. He was looking forward to it. This kid is already a 4th Revolution Golden Immortal. Emissary Li Qing's face twitched, and the others were also frightened. Was this the terror of a first-grade great sovereign? In the past 100,000 years, this was the first time they had seen someone become a 4th Revolution Golden Immortal after ascending. Moreover, looking at his posture, he had yet to stop breaking through. Time continued to pass. No one spoke. The atmosphere was extremely silent. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. When Zhou Xuanji reached 5th Revolution Golden Immortal, his cultivation stopped growing as well. Devil Emperor Dugu had said that he could become a 3rd Revolution Golden Immortal, but he was 2 revolutions higher. Sigh, it would be great if that old brat was here. Zhou Xuanji thought regretfully. He really wanted to see Devil Emperor Dugu's shocked expression. His gaze fell on emissary Li Qing and the others. Seeing their dumbfounded expressions, Zhou Xuanji knew that the situation was not good. It wasn't good to be too high profile. Don't let your enemies find out. After a while, his cultivation stopped increasing and stopped at the 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. He took a step forward with Bai Suwen and the golden light dissipated. He looked at emissary Li Qing and the others with a frown. Emissary Li Qing's solemn face bloomed like a chrysanthemum. You must be Zhou Xuanji. The Divine Cliff welcomes you, he said with a smile. The Divine Cliff. Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted. Holy shit. I'm in a thief's den. He remembered that Devil Emperor Dugu was killed by the Divine Cliff. Only his soul fell into the northern wilderness region and lingered on with his last breath. The Divine Cliff was evidently more powerful than the Heavenly Hall. What should he do? Don't worry. The Divine Cliff rules over a region, which the Heavenly Hall cannot compare to. The Cliff Lord has spoken to allow you to join the Divine Cliff. The Divine Cliff will nurture you with all its resources. Emissary Li Qing saw Zhou Xuanji's worry and quickly explained. The others also spoke up to rope in Zhou Xuanji. Yeah. The Heavenly Hall is nothing. Ha ha ha, it's your honor to join the Divine Cliff. The Divine Cliff can accept you, but anyone who wants to kill you will have to think twice. I've finally seen a living first-class great emperor. Tisk tsk. Brat, do you know that your name has already shaken the great thousand world? It's very dangerous for you to leave the Divine Cliff. Zhou Xuanji's frown eased. Since the Divine Cliff had no ill intentions, he would not reject them. Devil Emperor Dugu offended the Divine Cliff, but it was not his fault. He immediately brought Bai Suwen and landed on the ascension platform. Emissary Li Qing glanced at Bai Suwen and said to Zhou Xuanji with a smile, "Come with me to see the Cliff Lord. With your talent, you will be personally taught by the Cliff Lord in the future." Zhou Xuanji nodded. If the Divine Cliff was plotting something, they could have acted directly. Why would they go through so much trouble? He understood that even though he had broken through to 4th Revolution Golden Immortal, he was not a match for the divine cliff. And so, a group of people escorted Zhou Xuanji toward the portal. Zhou Xuanji asked the sword spirit to show him the information about the all-evil yin-yang destruction. Sword name, all-evil yin-yang destruction grade, Armageddon description, contains tens of thousands of evil energies. Once used, it can tear apart yin and yang, and it has the destructive power to destroy a human realm. One must be at least a 7th Revolution Golden Immortal to use this sword. 7th Revolution Golden Immortal? What a scam! Zhou Xuanji almost cursed out loud. The difference between a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal and a 7th Revolution Golden Immortal was huge. As he thought about it, he stepped into the portal. His vision blurred, and when he opened his eyes again, he saw a spacious and beautiful stone staircase. It was 30 meters wide, and there was a lake on both sides. Lotus flowers floated on the surface of the lake. In front of him were many majestic palaces and pavilions. At the end of the staircase was a towering mountain that reached into the clouds. At first glance, it looked like a celestial city. Many fairies were flying around in the air, and many cultivators were walking and cultivating on the roads. Some tall pavilions and palaces had mighty giant beasts sitting on top of them. Brother Zhou, you are related to the 9 Heaven Divine Snake clan? Emissary Li Qing's voice came. He looked at Zhou Xuanji with a smile. You know her? Zhou Xuanji asked. Emissary Li Qing nodded and said, the 9 Heaven Divine Snake clan has a high status and is on good terms with many factions. When this girl was brought here by her elders, I was fortunate enough to see her sleeping soundly on her father's shoulder. Bai Suan, who was in Zhou Xuanji's arms, looked up and spat her forked tongue. You have seen my father before? She asked curiously. Emissary Li Qing chuckled, of course. Your father is a true god. He is brilliant and mighty. I can't forget him after seeing him. Such a bootlicker. Zhou Xuanji ridiculed him in his heart, but he looked calm on the surface. Oh, from now on, you better change your name. Don't use Zhou Xuanji's name. When you become a true god and have the power to protect yourself, then you can use your real name to roam the world. Emissary Li Qing changed the topic to Zhou Xuanji with a passionate tone. This guy was not only a first-class great emperor but also related to the 9 Heaven Divine Snake clan. He must be on good terms with him. Zhou Xuanji nodded and looked around. Chapter 418. On the way, Emissary Li Qing and the others continued to talk to Zhou Xuanji, causing the cultivators who passed by to look over. They did not recognize Zhou Xuanji, so they guessed that he was a new disciple. A new disciple who could be personally led by Emissary Li Qing was definitely of extraordinary status. Many people remembered Zhou Xuanji's face. If they met him in the future, they would definitely try to rope him in. After traveling for an hour, Emissary Li Qing and the others stopped in front of the stone steps at the foot of the towering peak. This stone staircase was tens of thousands of steps long, and it led halfway up the mountain. There was a huge palace there, and in front of the gate was a furnace that was dozens of feet tall. There were 3 incense sticks that looked like pillars, and the smell of sandalwood filled the air. You go up. It's not convenient for us to enter the hall. Zhou Xuanji nodded and walked up the stairs with Bai Suan. This distance was nothing to him. However, he did not walk very fast. He was neither fast nor slow, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. Bai Suan looked around, still very excited. Zhou Xuanji asked, Hey, will your elders come to pick you up later? The 9 Heaven Divine Snake clan had a wide network of connections. The disciples of the clan went to the mortal world under the influence of the 9 Heaven Divine Snake clan, so that after they ascended, they would be taken care of. Bai Suan scoffed. I'm not going back. I want to follow you. You've just arrived here and you've offended so many enemies. I have to protect you. Zhou Xuanji was quite amused. How could a great tribulation scattered immortal protect him? However, he was still a little touched. I didn't teach you for a year in vain. When he reached the top of the stone steps, the palace gate opened. 3 men and 2 women walked out. They looked very young. The men were handsome, and the women were fairy-like. They talked and laughed as they walked over. They noticed Zhou Xuanji and came over to greet him. Are you the new core disciple? A bald young man said with a smile as he sized up Zhou Xuanji. The other 4 had different expressions. Some were curious, some were disdainful, and some were judging. Zhou Xuanji could not see through their cultivation and was shocked in his heart. Their cultivation level was definitely above 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, I just ascended. I don't know what the Divine Cliff has arranged for me. Hearing this, the crowd was shocked. The lady in the blue dress muttered, to be able to meet the Cliff Master right after ascending, he must have the aptitude of a great emperor, and he must have reached the 3rd grade. The other 4 were even more curious. In the Great Thousand Worlds, the difficulty of becoming a martial emperor was much greater than in the mortal world. It wasn't because of the difficulty of the heavenly Tao, but because there were too many experts. It was easy to be ambushed when undergoing the tribulation. Furthermore, those who became martial emperors from the mortal world were practically all unrivaled existences. They had gone through countless battles. This was something that the disciples of many sects and clans in the Great Thousand World couldn't compare to. Zhou Xuanji gave off an elegant aura, and he did not look like a 3rd-class great emperor. Let's talk again next time. After saying this, Zhou Xuanji left. These 5 people evidently had their own intentions, and they might not have good intentions. He quickly led Bai Suan into the gate. The 5 core disciples of the Divine Cliff looked at each other. The bald young man said meaningfully, it seems like an extraordinary person has come to the Divine Cliff. With that, he laughed and left. The other 4 also disappeared from where they stood. After entering the hall, the door slammed shut. Zhou Xuanji looked ahead and saw 3 golden statues in front of the wall. The entire palace was resplendent and majestic. A man stood in front of the 3 golden statues with his back facing Zhou Xuanji. He had a medium build and wore a black robe. There was a hideous and strange beast diagram on his back, and his long white hair casually draped over his back. Just by looking at his back, Zhou Xuanji could sense an immense might. This was definitely the most powerful person he had ever seen in his life. The world calls me Han Shuzi. I'm the 16th Cliff Lord of the Divine Cliff, the Cliff Lord said as he turned around. The Divine Cliff's Cliff Master turned around and said. His face could be considered handsome, and he looked to be in his early 40s. His eyes were golden and extremely strange. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, Thank you for taking me in. You are not my enemy. Along the way, he thought about many things. He decided to stay in the Divine Cliff. Since the Divine Cliff was willing to protect him, why should he take the risk? To him, the most important thing was to become more powerful. He must become more powerful before the true gods found the northern wilderness region so that he would not fear them. Han Shuzi smiled and said, Your sect? From today onwards, you are a core disciple of the Divine Cliff. You will receive the same treatment as my personal disciple. Why are you still so distant? Zhou Xuanji was a little stunned. He immediately cupped his fist and bowed. Han Shuzi waved his hand and said, There is no need for such formalities. You have the talent of a first-class great emperor and might surpass me in the future. I hope that you can acknowledge the Divine Cliff and become a true member of the Divine Cliff. Of course, if you have other ambitions in the future, don't abandon the Divine Cliff and continue to protect it. Although the Divine Cliff was powerful, it only had one first-class great emperor, and that was the previous Cliff Lord. Zhou Xuanji said, repaying kindness with kindness has always been my principle. Han Shuzi looked at him intently before waving his hand and gesturing for him to come forward. After that, Han Shuzi began to tell Zhou Xuanji about the long history of the Divine Cliff. The Divine Cliff had existed for more than 500,000 years, even longer than the northern wilderness humans. Countless geniuses had been born, and dozens of them were listed on the Great Emperor Stele. Zhou Xuanji also learned that he was ranked 12th on the Great Emperor Stele. In the past 100,000 years, no new Great Emperor could be ranked in the top 20. This showed how devilish Zhou Xuanji was. However, Zhou Xuanji was not satisfied with this. This meant that there were 11 others who were more talented than him. Han Shuzi also talked about the structure of the Great Thousand World. The Great Thousand World, which was the upper realm, was incredibly vast. Even if all the mortal realms were added together, they would not be as big as it. The number of living beings was also incalculable. The Center God Province was the center of the Great Thousand World, and the Divine Cliff was also in the Center God Province. Currently, there were more than 10 factions in the Center God Province that were not inferior to the Divine Cliff, while the Heavenly Hall was only a second-rate faction in the Center God Province. Zhou Xuanji was shocked by what he heard. The upper realm was bigger and more exciting than he had imagined. There was always someone more powerful than you out there. According to Han Shuzi, the God provinces outside the Center God Province were also very powerful. However, the relationships between the God provinces were tense and hostile toward each other. He advised Zhou Xuanji not to leave the Center God Province when he went out in the future, in case he encountered any mishaps. The Center God Province was only on land, but there were factions in the sky as well. Each of the 33 heavens was equivalent to a Great Thousand World, and the Great Emperor Stele was above the 33 heavens. Further up, it was the residences of the powerhouses who were on equal footing with the heavenly law. After chatting with Han Shuzi for an hour, he finally let Zhou Xuanji go. Before he left, he passed a medallion to Zhou Xuanji. It was a golden medallion with the image of 3 gods carved on it. Behind it was the image of a cliff, which was incredibly exquisite. Finally, Han Shuzi instructed, "Stay here for 3 months. I will send someone to take care of you. If you have any questions, you can ask him for help." Half a year later, the Center God Province's Ascender examination will be held. At that time, you must bring glory to the Divine Cliff. If you can emerge victorious, you will receive great rewards that can help you reach 10th Revolution Golden Immortal within 10 years. You must not miss this opportunity. From today onwards, you will be called Ji Xian. Chapter 419. Ji Xian. Zhou Xuanji walked out of the palace with the Divine Cliff core token in his hand as he thought about his new name. Outside the hall, a burly man was waiting. He was wearing cotton clothes, and his muscles bulged out his clothes. His face was ferocious, and facing Zhou Xuanji, he immediately gave a simple and honest smile. He cupped his fists and said, "My name is Fei Hai, and I am a disciple of the Divine Cliff. From today onwards, I will be your servant. If you need anything, just leave it to me. The Divine Cliff has already arranged a residence for you. I will take you there now." He quietly sized up Zhou Xuanji. This was the first time he had seen someone who was already a core disciple upon entering the sect. News about Zhou Xuanji had already spread in the Divine Cliff. Fei Hai was quite happy to be chosen as Zhou Xuanji's servant. To him, this was a great opportunity. Zhou Xuanji nodded and left quickly under Fei Hai's lead. The two of them stepped into the air. Along the way, Fei Hai did not speak much and led the way obediently. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, the two arrived in front of a mansion. This residence was located on a small mountain, and immortal energy pervaded the air. There were 3 courtyards inside, and many spirit flowers and spirit herbs were planted there. In the courtyard, there were 2 old servants and 3 maidservants cleaning. Seeing Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Chen arrive, they immediately knelt down and paid their respects. "Greetings, Master." Zhou Xuanji scanned with his divine sense and found that the disciples living in the nearby hills were all very powerful. The weakest was a 3rd revolution golden immortal. It seemed like this was the residence of the divine cliff's geniuses. Fei Hai cupped his fists and said respectfully, "Senior, please stay here for now. I have to go back and pack my things. I will stay in one of the guest rooms here so that you can summon me at any time. At the same time, I will help you collect your stipend and disciple robes. Please give me the Divine Cliff Core token." Zhou Xuanji threw the Divine Cliff Core token to him and entered the residence with Bai Sowen. Fei Hai left quickly. He was very excited and did not want to waste any more time, lest he displeased Zhou Xuanji. "The spiritual qi here is abundant." Bai Sowen cried out in shock, which made Zhou Xuanji roll his eyes at her. "Could it be that the spiritual qi of your 9 heavens divine snake clan is inferior to this place?" Soon, he found a nice courtyard to stay in. There were many seeds of natural treasures in the supreme storage, including the 5-colored immortal fruit. However, this place was too conspicuous, and he was afraid of being stolen, so he didn't plant them for the time being. On that day, Fei Hai returned. He brought back a set of core disciple uniforms and 500 pure spirit pills for Zhou Xuanji. The Great Thousand World used mortal pills as currency. Pure spirit pills were the upgraded version of mortal pills. 1 pure spirit pill was equivalent to 1,000 mortal pills. Core disciples could receive 500 pure spirit pills every month, which could be used for cultivation or as money. Zhou Xuanji could also go to the Enchanted Artifact Pavilion to get a suitable enchanted artifact. In addition, core disciples could enter the Cultivation Technique Pavilion once a month for free. However, this opportunity could not be accumulated. If they did not go this month, they could only enter the Cultivation Technique Pavilion once next month, and they could only stay for 3 days at a time. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. Zhou Xuanji did not leave his house and tried to comprehend the cultivation of a 5th revolution golden immortal. After he got used to it, he left with Fei Hai. He left Bai Sowen in the mansion because he wanted to go to the technique chamber and it was not suitable for him to bring her along. On the way, Fei Hai introduced the situation of the Divine Cliff to him. There were over 1 million disciples in the Divine Cliff, and they were divided into outer disciples, inner disciples, elite disciples, core disciples, and direct disciples. After becoming an elite disciple, they could leave the Divine Cliff and work in various places. They could even supervise a mortal realm. However, the minimum requirement to become an elite disciple was 5th revolution golden immortal. To most disciples, it was beyond their reach, including Fei Hai. During this period, Fei Hai mentioned the major events that happened recently. Core disciple Long Kuan went out to train and was hunted down by the Blood Devil Palace. He almost died, and this caused a huge commotion in the Divine Cliff. The Blood Devil Palace was an overlord-level faction that was not inferior to the Divine Cliff. The daughter of the palace lord, Xiao Hongjun, disappeared mysteriously, which caused the Blood Devil Palace to become more irritable and create trouble everywhere. Zhou Xuanji looked calm, but he had some doubts in his heart. It turned out that Xiao Hongjun had descended to the mortal realm secretly. She deserved it. Now that she was trapped in the northern wilderness region, there was no help for her. Zhou Xuanji was very rich and did not need to go out on missions to increase his wealth. Wealth was very important because it could be used to exchange for more cultivation resources. Soon, they came to the Energy Technique Pavilion. Zhou Xuanji asked Fei Hai to find out the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords. Fei Hai had a strange expression, but he still agreed. After entering the pavilion, Zhou Xuanji flashed his Divine Cliff Core token, and the disciples on duty let him in. His target was the sword techniques and some sealing spells. The energy technique pavilion was huge. It was decorated in an antique manner, and many disciples stood before the bookshelves to read. Zhou Xuanji found a random bookshelf and began reading. On the other side, in the Cliff Lord Palace, Han Shuzi sat on the main seat. Dozens of people stood in the palace, and each of them had a powerful aura. He looked around and asked, Ji Xian's incident was not exposed, right? Emissary Li Qin replied, no. Those who know about this have been cursed. If they leak it, they will be punished by heaven and earth. Han Shuzi nodded. A handsome man with an elegant temperament stepped forward. He wore a white robe and was very eye-catching in the crowd. His name was Yang Yutian, the eldest disciple of Han Shuzi. He was a true god and extremely powerful. Revered teacher, I found out that Divine Lord Ji is also searching for the northern wilderness region secretly. His target is most likely Ji Xian. Should we be careful? Divine Lord Ji's foresight is miraculous and can always predict the future. We must be careful, Yang Yutian said with a solemn expression as he cupped his fist. As for Han Shuzi taking in Zhou Xuanji, he neither objected or agreed to it because the pros and cons were too complicated. Han Shuzi squinted his eyes and said, although Divine Lord Ji is powerful, he acts strangely and never attacks openly. Let's pretend that we don't know about this and stop investigating him, lest we alert the enemy. Yang Yutian nodded. Investigating Divine Lord Ji was extremely stressful, and he wanted to give up a long time ago. He thought of something else and said, Shi Shenzong is about to become a great emperor. Although the Hegemon sword sect is a new force that rose 10,000 years ago, Shi Shenzong is extremely talented and is the revered teacher of the Hegemon sword emperor. We must stop him. The Divine Cliff and the Hegemon sword emperor had always been on bad terms. Back then, Han Shuzi tried to recruit the Hegemon sword emperor but was rejected rudely. Han Shuzi did not take it out on him, but after that, the Hegemon sword emperor would teach the Divine Cliff disciples a lesson. Although he did not kill them, it was a slap to the Divine Cliff's face. An old man said with a frown, the Cliff Lord can't go personally. Who should we send? The Hegemon sword emperor is not weak. Not only Han Shuzi, but Yang Yutian was also not suitable. If they were to go, they would be bullying the weak. Han Shuzi smiled and said, let Ji Xian go and make a name for himself before the Ascender examination. When the time comes, it will be harder for him to be exposed. Moreover, Ji Xian defeated Shi Shenzong in the northern wilderness region. Even the Hegemon sword emperor was defeated by him. Mentioning this, everyone's expression changed. Every time they thought of Zhou Xuanji's accomplishments, they felt mixed emotions. If they were at Zhou Xuanji's cultivation level, they would not have been able to defeat the Heavenly Law Army. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 420. 3 days later. Zhou Xuanji walked out of the Energy Technique Pavilion. Fei Hai was already waiting for him at the door. Senior, how was it? Fei Hai asked with a silly smile. His eyes were filled with envy. He wanted to enter the Energy Technique Pavilion too, but it required too many pure spirit pills. Almost all of his pure spirit pills were spent on cultivation. For disciples like them, who were not very talented, pure spirit pills were a necessity for cultivation. Zhou Xuanji nodded lightly and said, not bad. He memorized all the sword techniques in the Energy Technique Pavilion. In the Great Thousand World, energy techniques, spells, and divine abilities were not differentiated by grades. But after a glance, he felt that these sword techniques were more powerful than most sword techniques in the northern wilderness region. The Divine Cliff lived up to its name indeed. The Divine Cliff was not a sword sect, so there were not many sword techniques. But there were still quite a few. He memorized about 400 sword techniques. He planned to record these sword techniques after he returned and put them in Skyfall's Xuanji Sword Pavilion. This was somewhat shameless. He could only apologize to the Divine Cliff and help them as much as he could in the future. The two returned to the residence. There was a guest in the courtyard. It was emissary Li Qing. He was one of the 36 emissaries of the Divine Cliff. He had a high status and powerful cultivation, so the servants naturally invited him into the residence. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, he got up with a smile and said, "Brother Zhou, how have you been? The Divine Cliff has a mission for you to do." He went straight to the point and did not beat around the bush. "What mission?" Zhou Xuanji asked. He was shocked in his heart. He thought that the Divine Cliff would protect him tightly and not allow him to go out before he became powerful enough. He did not expect a mission so soon. Emissary Li Qing told him about the mission. It was about Shi Shenzong becoming a great emperor, which made Zhou Xuanji laugh. He did not expect this guy to become a great emperor. Zhou Xuanji said directly, "Does Shi Shenzong have enmity with the Divine Cliff? To be honest, I admire him. He comprehended his sword soul from Shi Shenzong. In Shi Shenzong, he saw the true spirit of a sword saint." Emissary Li Qing was a little stunned. He has no enmity with the Divine Cliff, but the hegemon sword emperor does. Zhou Xuanji understood and said, "Then I will do my best." Each of them had their own masters, so there was nothing much to say. Actually, it's fine to let him become a great emperor. However, if you can deal a heavy blow to the hegemon sword sect spirit, you will have completed your mission, Emissary Li Qing said with a meaningful smile. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and accepted the mission. He then asked when they would depart. Emissary Li Qing replied, "Tomorrow, you will go with another core disciple, Lan Shangying. She will lead the way." Zhou Xuanji nodded and asked, "What if I accidentally expose my identity?" If he was in a life-or-death situation, he might have to use all his trump cards. Even if he didn't, he might be recognized. Emissary Li Qing smiled and said, "You have already become a great emperor and have nothing to do with the mortal realm. If anyone doesn't believe that you are Ji Xian, they can come to the Divine Cliff to demand an explanation." Domineering. Zhou Xuanji was almost convinced. Zhou Xuanji had already become a great emperor and was not in the northern wilderness region. He was no longer the biggest obstacle to the plan to exterminate the northern wilderness humans. At least not on the surface. Emissary Li Qing exchanged a few more pleasantries and left. Fei Hai asked curiously, "Senior, is your identity very special?" Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said with a smile that did not seem like a smile, "That's a secret. If you know, you will die." Fei Hai was so frightened that his body trembled and he hurriedly covered his mouth. Time passed quickly for the two of them. Lan Shangying came to find Zhou Xuanji when the sun had just risen. Bai Suan insisted on following him, and he had no choice but to put her in his bosom. After walking out of the residence, he saw Lan Shangying. This woman was wearing a blue dress and had a slim figure. Her facial features were exquisite, but her expression was very cold. She gave off the aura of a fairy, holy and inviolable. Before, Zhou Xuanji had seen her when he had visited Han Shuzi. Lan Shangying nodded slightly and said, "Let's go." After saying this, she gripped her scabbard and flew away on her sword. Zhou Xuanji followed closely behind her. The two of them flew through the clouds and did not speak. She did not speak, and Zhou Xuanji did not bother to talk to her. However, Bai Suan was very excited. She stuck out her snake head and continuously chattered. The first time Zhou Xuanji heard her voice, he had thought that she was an introverted female demon. After getting to know her, he realized that it was all a lie. The two of them flew faster and faster. Lan Xiangying was testing Zhou Xuanji and found that no matter how fast she flew, Zhou Xuanji could keep up. 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. Did he really just ascend? She was shocked in her heart and became even more curious about Zhou Xuanji. After passing through the dense fog, Zhou Xuanji could finally see the outline of the land. Below him, the mountains rose and fell, and birds flew in circles. Looking up, he could see many towns and villages. The Great Thousand World was similar to the northern wilderness region, just that it was much larger and had denser spiritual qi. In a wasteland, Shi Shenzong sat on a giant rock, internalizing qi with his legs crossed. 1,000 meters away, there were sword cultivators standing guard in all directions. They looked around warily. The Hegemon Sword Emperor was there too. He had a muscular figure and sat on a golden throne. His hands were on the hilt of his sword, and the blade was stabbed into the rock beneath him. He wore a brown fur robe with black armor underneath. His black hair danced in the wind, and he gave off a wild aura. He did not look like a sword emperor but a shocking demon king. He looked at Shi Shenzong expectantly. He had never doubted Shi Shenzong's talent. After all, Shi Shenzong was the person he respected the most. Although they had conflicts before, their relationship had never deteriorated. A sword cultivator appeared beside him and half knelt. Sect Lord, according to reliable news, Nangong Lai is coming with 100 golden immortals. He said with a deep voice. The Hegemon Sword Emperor heard him, and his eyes sparkled. As expected, the news was leaked, he mumbled. He could not help but feel a headache. He was powerful, but he could not rule the Center God province unhindered. After all, he had only ascended for 10,000 years, and the Hegemon sword sect he established was not powerful enough. As such, he had to help Shi Shenzong become a great emperor. Scout again. The Hegemon Sword Emperor said, and the sword cultivator immediately left. He looked at Shi Shenzong again. As long as Shi Shenzong became a great emperor, any sacrifice would be worth it. He suddenly thought of Zhou Xuanji. Compared to that brat's talent, Shi Shenzong would seem mediocre. It could even be said that Zhou Xuanji was the most talented person in the history of the northern wilderness region. It was a pity that he insisted on protecting the northern wilderness region. If he did not think things through, he would be finished sooner or later. As for Zhou Xuanji, he greatly admired him. Back in the inheritance world, Zhou Xuanji's words had allowed him to break through in his way of the sword and greatly increase his strength. He had wanted to recruit Zhou Xuanji. It was a pity that this fellow was too monstrous. Before he had ascended, everyone in the Center God province had heard of his name. Every time he thought of this, the Hegemon Sword Emperor would feel very angry. He felt a kind of annoyance that someone could not live up to his expectations. Of course, it was not that this person could not live up to his expectations, but that he was too tough. Boom! At that moment, an explosion sounded out, breaking the Hegemon Sword Emperor's thoughts and causing him to look. Shi Shenzong exploded out with magic energy, and traces of wind wrapped around his body, causing the ground to tremble. Thunderclouds gathered. He was preparing to become a great emperor. Before, Shi Shenzong had already defeated 10 great emperor candidates, and everything was going smoothly. Before becoming a great emperor, he wanted to comprehend his way of the sword. It seemed that he had gained an even higher level of comprehension. TXT. I have countless legendary swords. Chapter 421. When Shi Shenzong began to become a great emperor, Zhou Xuanji and Lan Xiangying were still moving forward. Lan Xiangying had extraordinary talent, but she had never become a great emperor before. To become a great emperor, not only talent was needed, but fate was also needed. Lan Xiangying had lived in the Divine Cliff since she was young. She would go out to train occasionally, but she had never obtained heavenly law fate. So, she was very interested in becoming a great emperor. Especially a third-class great emperor like Zhou Xuanji. Third-class great emperor was the identity given to Zhou Xuanji by the divine cliff. After all, a first-class great emperor was too eye-catching and would easily attract the attention of the center god province. If Shi Shenzong can become a great emperor, then he will not need to undergo the tribulation. When we arrive, he might have already become a great emperor, Zhou Xuanji reminded. Zhou Xuanji reminded. This woman was simply too cold. They had been out for a few days, but she had not spoken a single word. But she kept sizing him up secretly, and he could not take it any more. Lan Xiangying didn't even turn her head as she said, "Then kill him." Such arrogance. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes and asked, "Are you a match for the hegemon sword emperor?" Lan Xiangying replied, "I have the power to fight." She was a core disciple of the divine cliff and was naturally powerful. Zhou Xuanji fell silent. He had accidentally given her a chance to act cool, and he was a little unhappy. The two continued forward quickly. They were getting closer to the place where Shi Shenzong was becoming a great emperor, and they could already sense the heavenly might. Lan Xiangying's eyes squinted, and she suddenly increased her speed, flying over. Zhou Xuanji followed closely behind. Such a powerful aura. It must be the hegemon sword emperor. Who is he fighting with? Zhou Xuanji thought to himself curiously. He had yet to fight with his full power after reaching 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. He was looking forward to seeing how powerful he was. The hegemon sword emperor should have already surpassed Golden Immortal. The hegemon sword emperor must have participated in the Ascender examination that Han Shuzi mentioned. With his fame, how could he not be the final victor? At the same time, in the barren land, Shi Shenzong stood in the air and enjoyed the heavenly grace. His cultivation grew tremendously. Two powerful beams of light clashed violently around the heavenly grace pillar. It was the hegemon sword emperor and Nangong Lai. More precisely, Nangong Lai wanted to stop Shi Shenzong from becoming a great emperor, but the hegemon sword emperor had been stopping him. Nangong Lai wore a blue robe with a phoenix embroidered with golden threads. He held a circular fan in his hands and fought in-ten with the hegemon. Silhouettes of cultivators could be seen fighting in every direction. Explosions rang out one after another, shattering the land within a radius of 500 kilometers. The hegemon sword emperor wielded the gigantic sword in his hand and danced about wildly. Sword chi wreaked havoc and even the thunder clouds were scattered. However, no matter how powerful he was, Nangong Lai could easily receive his attacks. Hegemon sword emperor, you are still too young. I advise you to give up. Nangong Lai coldly mocked, his gaze never leaving Shi Shenzong. Shi Shenzong must die. With his talent, he would definitely become a second-grade great sovereign. The hegemon sword emperor did not reply. He continuously executed all sorts of sword arts, but he still did not allow Nangong Lai to get close to the heavenly grace light pillar. Even his magic power could not be used. Shi Shenzong's cultivation had already reached the 1st Revolution Golden Immortal realm. Previously, he had already ascended and his cultivation had reached the 8th Tribulation Scattered Immortal realm. Furthermore, he had received the hegemon sword emperor's nurturing, so he had already reached the peak of the 9th Tribulation Scattered Immortal realm before becoming a martial emperor. After breaking through to the 1st Revolution Golden Immortal realm, he slowly opened his eyes and a sword soul condensed behind him. So powerful. Is this a heavenly revolution Golden Immortal? He stared at his hands and muttered to himself, ignoring the fighting around him. Zhou Xuanji, I still surpassed you. He laughed in high spirits, insufferably arrogant. When he had found out that Zhou Xuanji had become a first-class great emperor, he had not come back to his senses for a few days. Now that Zhou Xuanji was trapped in the northern wilderness region and could not break through to Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortal, he had done it first. He suddenly wanted to fight Zhou Xuanji again. It was a pity that he had lost contact with the northern wilderness region. Xiao! An ear-piercing sound was heard as Lan Xiangying charged over with her sword. She was extremely fast. The hegemon sword emperor widened his eyes and bellowed furiously, "You're courting death." Another huge sword appeared in his left hand, and he slashed at Lan Xiangying. The sword qi turned into mountains and rivers, and it was majestic and unstoppable. Lan Xiangying's expression changed slightly. She shook her right hand, and sword flowers shot out in all directions. Sword qi turned into a storm and crashed into the sword qi mountain river. Bang! The ground shook, and Shi Shenzong was almost sent flying. He gritted his teeth and stared at Lan Xiangying. This woman's cultivation level is so high. Lan Xiangying didn't attack him. Instead, she charged towards the hegemon sword emperor. "Nangong Lai, let's fight him together," Lan Xiangying said coldly. Hearing this, Nangong Lai laughed heartily. The core disciples of the divine cliff are indeed ruthless. He sighed in admiration, and his gaze turned to the hegemon sword emperor. His gaze became ruthless. Once Lan Xiangying joined in, the hegemon sword emperor became passive. This is going to be troublesome. The hegemon sword emperor groaned inwardly. If the divine cliff sent another core disciple, then it would really be over. He subconsciously looked in the direction that Lan Xiangying had come from, and his expression changed drastically. A black-robed swordsman walked over with a sword in hand. He wore a bamboo hat and an iron mask. It was Zhou Xuanji. He held the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and walked towards Shi Shenzong step by step. Shi Shenzong also noticed him and couldn't help but feel shocked. Such a powerful sword qi. Shi Shenzong narrowed his eyes, and seeing Zhou Xuanji's eyes, his heart trembled. Could it be him? Impossible. As if struck by lightning, he froze on the spot. Shouldn't Zhou Xuanji be in the northern wilderness region? Be careful. This kid is a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. The hegemon sword emperor fought 1 against 2, but he didn't forget to remind Shi Shenzong. 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. Shi Shenzong deeply breathed in. This person most likely wasn't Zhou Xuanji. No matter how talented Zhou Xuanji was, it was impossible for him to have 5th Revolution Golden Immortal cultivation right now. Moreover, it was the first time he had seen the sword in Zhou Xuanji's hand. Zhou Xuanji did not have such a sword. Zhou Xuanji walked at a moderate pace, as if he was not in a hurry to act. Shi Shenzong immediately understood. His opponent was waiting for him to become a great emperor. This was not out of goodwill. Instead, it was an extreme battle intent. Shi Shenzong's gaze became sharp, and he took out his 2 swords. After the heavenly grace disappeared, he would rush at Zhou Xuanji. Even though there was a difference of 4 revolutions in cultivation, he was going to fight. He was the sword saint, and in terms of the way of the sword, he would not lose to others. Moreover, they were both golden immortals, and with his talent, he could make up for the difference in cultivation levels. Zhou Xuanji closely looked at Shi Shenzong and inwardly praised, "You're already a 1st Revolution Golden Immortal, not bad." Not too long ago, Shi Shenzong's cultivation had been higher than his. He swept out his divine sense towards the hegemon sword emperor, Nangong Lai, and Lan Xiangying. The battle between the 3 of them was incredibly grand, and it could be described as apocalyptic. They definitely surpassed 10th Revolution Golden Immortals. Void Extreme Immortal. He learned from the Divine Cliff's Technique Pavilion that the Void Extreme Immortal was above the 10th Revolution Golden Immortal, and above that was the true God. Void Extreme Immortals could already do as they pleased in the Center God province. Of course, they were still far from being comparable to true gods. Looks like if I want to challenge the hegemon sword emperor, I'll have to climb even higher. Zhou Xuanji thought. Although he had received the Hegemon Sword Emperor's inheritance, it did not stop him from challenging the Hegemon Sword Emperor. Since he wanted to be the only Sword Emperor, the other Sword Emperors had to be defeated by his sword. Chapter 422. Bai Suan popped her head out from Zhou Xuanji's bosom and looked at the battle in the sky. Wow, so strong. Are we really going there? Little Ji Xian, are you as strong as them? Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji felt a headache. He ignored it and continued to look at Shi Shenzong. This fellow was about to succeed in becoming a great emperor. He had already become a 5th-grade great sovereign. From the looks of it, he should be a 2nd-grade great martial emperor. After all, he was once the most outstanding genius in the way of the sword in the history of the northern wilderness region. Even the Hegemon Sword Emperor was inferior to him. Seeing Zhou Xuanji come closer and closer to Shi Shenzong, the Hegemon Sword Emperor felt incredibly worried. However, he could only barely hold on against 2 Void Extreme Immortals, and he was unable to help Shi Shenzong. In the distance, the Hegemon Sword Sect sword cultivators were still fighting bitterly. 6 of them had already died. The 100 Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortals that Nangong Lai brought were clearly stronger. Who is that guy? Why does it give me a familiar feeling? The Hegemon Sword Emperor thought to himself as he fought. Zhou Xuanji did not immediately act, evidently not because he feared him but because he wanted to wait until Shi Shenzong became a great emperor before acting. The reason was very simple, because his footsteps did not stop. Zhou Xuanji looked down at his Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and mumbled, "Today, you will reveal your brilliance." Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss. He spoke in a deliberately hoarse voice. Shi Shenzong, who was within the pillar of divine grace, frowned. The name, Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss, did not sound like a good thing. Ghost Sword. Zhou Xuanji slowly walked forwards, waiting for Shi Shenzong to finish becoming a great emperor. Ding! The legendary sword's level has been successfully updated. From low to high, they are ordinary stone, iron, bronze, silver, gold, purple crystal, glorious gold, heavenly soul, intimidating spirit, celestial shaking, God-slaying, apocalyptic, ancient gazing, disaster releasing, cosmos essence, overturning heaven, heavenly connection, 9 extremities, and primordial chaos. The sword spirit's voice suddenly sounded out in Zhou Xuanji's mind, which stunned him. A new divine sword level. Ancient gazing, disaster releasing, universe essence, overturning heavens, heaven span, 9 extremities, primordial chaos. A total of 7 major realms. His breathing quickened. As expected, the supreme legendary sword system did not disappoint him. Even if he came to the boundless world, he could still rely on the divine sword to rise. However, just the Armageddon sword required the cultivation of a 7th Revolution Golden Immortal, so what realm did the ancient gazing sword require? Where is the disaster-releasing divine sword? Where was the divine sword of Qian Yuan? The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt. Of course, he was even more excited. 100 miles away. An old beggar sat on the peak of a 2,000 feet tall mountain. He held a roasted leg in his hand, and his hand was covered in grease. His body was thin and short, and his hair was as white as withered grass. His face was covered in freckles and dirt. While munching on the roasted leg, he clicked his tongue in wonder and said, 3 Void Extreme Immortals are fighting here, and one of them is becoming a great emperor. It seems like he has the potential of a 2nd-grade great emperor. How interesting. Behind him, a valiant man dressed in luxurious clothes walked over. This person had a handsome face and a strong physique. The purple robe he wore resembled a dragon's robe. He frowned slightly and looked at the old beggar impatiently. "Master, are we still on our way?" The purple-robed man asked in a deep voice. He was the most helpless when it came to his master. The old beggar looked at the battle in the distance and snorted, "Little four, don't think that you can be so arrogant just because you have the title of Crown Dragon Darksaber." Back then, Di Guanlong felt like his head was about to explode. Every time he urged the old beggar, the beggar would start boasting. Because they were master and disciple, he had to listen. Helplessly, he could only look into the distance. Second grade Great Emperor? Humph. Di Guanlong snorted coldly in disdain. A while later, Shi Shenzong finally became a great emperor and reached second grade Great Emperor. The light pillar of divine grace dissipated. He held both swords in his hands and turned to look at Zhou Xuanji. His eyes were burning with battle intent. "I'm the Sword Saint Shi Shenzong. Who are you? Tell me your name." Shi Shenzong cried out proudly. With both swords in his hands, he feared nothing in the world. Zhou Xuanji hastened his steps and dashed over. "I'm the Divine Cliff's core disciple, Ji Xian." After he spoke, Zhou Xuanji came up to Shi Shenzong with the 8-step sword lunge and slashed at him. So fast. Shi Shenzong's pupils contracted as he thought to himself in shock. He knew about the Divine Cliff's core disciples. All of them were elites among men. How could a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal become a core disciple? He did not have time to think and instinctively blocked with his swords. Clang! Zhou Xuanji sent Shi Shenzong flying back with a single slash. The horrifying power almost caused Shi Shenzong's swords to fly out of his hands. After flying out for 1,000 meters, he stabbed both swords into the ground and slid dozens of meters before he stopped. His eyes turned cold and fearless. Instead, he unleashed his aura and charged at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji did not use his signature sword technique. Instead, he used a sword technique that he had just learned. Wind Breath Wave Sword. He quickly swung the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss, and ghostly howls could be heard. Clang! 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 The two of them fought intensely. Both of their swords were extremely fast, and afterimages of their swords appeared one after another. Their movements were gorgeous and pleasing to the eye. A violent gale blew and isolated the battlefield. Zhou Xuanji used his absolute advantage in cultivation to suppress Shi Shenzong. Shi Shenzong could only barely deal with Zhou Xuanji's attacks and could not retaliate. Damn! Shi Shenzong gritted his teeth and wanted to use his sword soul. However, Zhou Xuanji's swords were extremely cunning and difficult to defend against. He could not find an opportunity to activate his sword soul. Zhou Xuanji suddenly laughed with a hoarse voice, "I've just ascended for less than a month. You are inferior to me." Shi Shenzong's pupils contracted. Just ascended? The cultivation level of those who ascended from the mortal world did not exceed that of a 5th Tribulation Scattered Immortal. How did he become a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal? Shi Shenzong's heart trembled. At that moment, Zhou Xuanji suddenly unleashed the Wind Breath Wave Sword Will. In the blink of an eye, Shi Shenzong's body was covered with wounds, and his swords flew out of his hands. Zhou Xuanji's attainments in the way of the sword surpassed his, and adding on his great emperor rank, cultivation, and legendary swords, how could Shi Shenzong not lose? Xiao! The tip of the sword landed on his throat, and Shi Shenzong's body froze. His face turned red and he gritted his teeth. He felt so aggrieved that he was about to explode. He was defeated before he even used his ultimate skill. It was really vexing. Zhou Xuanji suddenly sent a telepathic message to him, causing him to open his eyes wide as if he had seen a ghost. "I'm Zhou Xuanji. Follow me and become my sword slave. I'll definitely help you surpass the 9 emperors of the way of the sword." Shi Shenzong was not humiliated by his words. He was still in shock and was unable to pull himself out of it. How could this be? He was Zhou Xuanji. Why was he here? And he was a 5th revolution golden immortal? At that moment, Shi Shenzong suddenly felt an urge to explode with vulgarities, but the Sword Saint's self-restraint made it so that he could not say a single word. Shameless brat, if you dare to kill him, I won't let you off for the rest of my life. The Hegemon Sword Emperor furiously roared, sounding like thunder. Zhou Xuanji ignored him and looked at Shi Shenzong with a burning gaze. Shi Shenzong's talent in the way of the sword was simply too shocking, and it was best to use him for himself. It was just like the Heavenly Palace's Xianyuan Shenhao, who was still being brainwashed at Skyfall. Shi Shenzong gritted his teeth and sent a telepathic message, "Are you humiliating me?" Zhou Xuanji calmly replied, "Among my sword slaves, there are 2 10,000-year princes, 1 descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline, 1 exquisite sword mind, and 1 overseas' number 1 genius in the way of the sword. Their talent is not inferior to yours, so how is taking me as their master humiliating you? I have the talent of a first-class great emperor, and before I ascended, I killed a 1st revolution golden immortal and destroyed all those who became great emperors. In the current world, apart from me, who has the qualifications to make you submit? Do you want to go through today's situation again? You'd rather follow your disciple and become a joke than follow me? The Hegemon Sword Emperor cannot protect you, but I can. Chapter 423. Shi Shenzong fell silent. Zhou Xuanji's words caused him to feel shocked, and he also felt a stabbing pain in his heart. That was right. He was a sword saint, but after ascending, he had to rely on his disciple to protect him. Wasn't this a joke? He also wanted to be independent. However, he had offended the Xianyuan clan of the Heavenly Palace, and the other forces were also drooling over his talent. If he did not have anyone to protect him, it would be very difficult for him to survive. In the Great Thousand World, there were countless capable people. Even if he hid deep in the mountains, there would still be people who could find him. Zhou Xuanji saw that it was difficult for him to accept and sent a telepathic message again, how about becoming a sword attendant instead of a sword slave? Shi Shenzong was speechless and couldn't help but reply, "Is there a difference?" Zhou Xuanji replied, "To make you feel better." Shi Shenzong fell silent. The Hegemon Sword Emperor, who was currently fighting, felt incredibly anxious. Zhou Xuanji's sword was already at Shi Shenzong's throat, and he could take Shi Shenzong's life at any moment. Nangong Lai asked as he cast the spell, "Why isn't the little friend of the Divine Cliff making a move? Could it be that the Divine Cliff was not here to help him? Was it just an act?" Lan Shangying didn't reply, but she frowned slightly. Zhou Xuanji had just arrived and did not know the rules, but she understood. After all, Shi Shenzong was a 3rd-class great emperor. Seeing someone with greater talent, he would probably feel unbalanced and want to bully Shi Shenzong. The battle continued. Zhou Xuanji and Yi Zichen seemed to be in another world. They did not move and communicated telepathically. Shi Shenzong found it a bit difficult to endure Su Chen's words, and his heart started to soften. After a while, Shi Shenzong looked up at the Hegemon Sword Emperor and faintly sighed as he sent a voice transmission, "Forget it, I will follow you. I can be used by you, but I cannot be a sword slave." Zhou Xuanji smiled. "I was afraid that you wouldn't be worried." He would first trick Shi Shenzong over, then slowly make him submit. And so, Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword and left. Shi Shenzong followed closely behind. The Hegemon Sword Emperor widened his eyes and hurriedly shouted, "Shi Shenzong, where are you going?" Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji was delighted. No wonder Shi Shenzong had been moved. That fellow didn't even call him master anymore, he was simply too disgraceful. Shi Shenzong turned around and said, "Apologies, from today onwards, I will follow him. His name is Ji Xian, and his talent in the way of the sword is greater than mine." The Hegemon Sword Emperor nearly vomited blood. What the hell? He had not expected this turn of events at all. If you are in trouble in the future, I will definitely do my best to repay you for your decades of support. Shi Shenzong said calmly. After thinking about it, he and the Hegemon Sword Emperor did not owe each other anything. Back in the northern wilderness region, if not for him, the Hegemon Sword Emperor would have died long ago. Now, because of the difference in their realms, the Hegemon Sword Emperor treated him as an equal, and he already had a knot in his heart. The Hegemon Sword Emperor's face instantly darkened. Lan Xiangying and Nangong Lai also looked at Zhou Xuanji in confusion. What did this brat say to change Shi Shenzong's attitude? They had some understanding of Shi Shenzong. He would rather die than submit. Back then, if it wasn't for the Hegemon Sword Emperor saving him, he most likely would have died outside the Heavenly Palace. Zhou Xuanji brought Shi Shenzong and quickly left. Lan Xiangying also left the battlefield and turned into a ray of sword light as she chased after Zhou Xuanji. Nangong Lai and the Hegemon Sword Emperor stopped as well. The Hegemon Sword Emperor's face was dark and he did not say anything, nor did he chase after Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong. His heart was filled with unprecedented grievance. He really wanted to explode, but he didn't know who to explode at. To Zhou Xuanji? Lan Xiangying would definitely help. Ask Shi Shenzong? Then he would really be branded as a traitor. Nangong Lai smiled and said, Hegemon Sword Emperor, this is truly a cause for celebration. See you next time. He turned around and left quickly. The golden immortals he brought with him also retreated. The Hegemon Sword Emperor floated in the air and forcefully suppressed his anger. He was thinking. He racked his brains to think. Why had Shi Shenzong betrayed him? Was it because the divine cliff was too strong? Or was he bewitched by that disciple of the divine cliff? Dozens of sword xiu flew over from all directions. Every one of them was covered in blood and looked very dispirited. In this battle, they had lost miserably and had even become a laughingstock. They hated Shi Shenzong to the core, but they didn't dare to say anything. The other side. Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong flew at full speed, and Lan Xiangying quickly caught up to them. She flew over to Zhou Xuanji and asked, How did you convince him? Zhou Xuanji chuckled and said, He and I are old friends. Lan Xiangying suddenly understood. Shi Shenzong came from the northern wilderness region. Didn't that mean that Zhou Xuanji was also from the northern wilderness region? The Sword Dao Great Emperor of the northern wilderness region. Her pupils shrank as if she had thought of something. Her body trembled slightly, but she didn't say anything. Zhou Xuanji. Xuanji. Ji Xian, waves of shock surged in her heart. Zhou Xuanji's name shook the Center God province, and he was known as the most powerful genius in the mortal realm. He was ranked 12th on the Great Emperor Stele. In terms of talent, he was definitely the most talented cultivator in the past 100,000 years. No wonder Shi Shenzong became his disciple. Zhou Xuanji turned to look at Shi Shenzong and said, From today onwards, you will follow me to the divine cliff. You will stay in my residence, and we can exchange insights in the sword's way anytime. To intimidate Shi Shenzong, he condensed 9 sword souls straight away. Shi Shenzong was tongue-tied, and he looked as if he had seen a ghost. He could only condense 1 sword soul, and he had to accumulate power. Zhou Xuanji could condense 9 sword souls at will. How could he not be shocked? His eyes were burning with passion. He wanted to learn such a skill. Lan Xiangying did not speak, but she was also stunned by Zhou Xuanji. She knew about sword souls because she also cultivated sword techniques. Her impression of Zhou Xuanji changed completely, and she was filled with interest in him. A day passed. The Hegemon Sword Emperor did not catch up to them. He had most likely given up. However, they were stopped by another person. It was the old beggar and Di Guanlong. The old beggar looked at Zhou Xuanji and chuckled as he said, "Brat, I like you. Take me as your teacher." Di Guanlong frowned and looked at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji asked with narrowed eyes, "Who are you, sir?" Lan Xiangying drew her sword and was prepared to fight. Before they set off for the mission, Han Xuzi had instructed her to bring Zhou Xuanji back alive. "Who I am is not important. What's important is that by following me, you can reach the heights of the divine cliffs." Han Xuzi, the old beggar said proudly. He placed his hands on his waist, looking as cocky as he could be. Before Zhou Xuanji could speak, Lan Xiangying was already furious. She said coldly, "Sir, why are you looking down on the divine cliff?" Di Guanlong snorted and said, "So what if it's the divine cliff? We're going to the divine cliff to kill Han Xuzi. I advise you not to go back, the divine cliff will be destroyed by me." Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji and the others' expressions changed. Who was Han Xuzi? He was the lord of the divine cliff, a powerhouse of the Center God province. Back then, even Devil Emperor Dugu was not a match for him. This person's tone was arrogant. He said that he was going to kill Han Xuzi. Di Guanlong grabbed the old beggar's shoulder and snorted, "Don't waste your breath with them. Kill Han Xuzi first. You only know how to waste time." As he spoke, he pulled the old beggar away. The old beggar could not resist at all and said to Zhou Xuanji, "Brat, wait for me. I'm the destined master. If you miss me, you will regret it." His voice became more and more distant, and soon, he and Di Guanlong disappeared over the horizon. They were heading towards the divine cliff. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 424. After the old beggar and Di Guanlong left, Zhou Xuanji and the others fell silent. Bai Suwen popped her head out from Zhou Xuanji's chest and said, "Little Ji Xian, let's not go back. The two people just now were very powerful. They gave me goosebumps. They are much more powerful than the big sister beside you." The 9 heavens divine snake's senses were extremely sharp. Back then, with his 7th rank cultivation, he could already sense that Zhou Xuanji came from another world. Zhou Xuanji looked at Lan Xiangying. Lan Xiangying sighed and said, "That person is indeed very powerful. I feel as if I am facing the cliff master. However, it will be very difficult for us to return." "Why?" Zhou Xuanji asked. "With their speed, they would be able to reach the divine cliff in less than 2 days. Because we've been ambushed." Lan Xiangying said faintly as she looked around. Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong were stunned and took out their swords, preparing to fight. There were undulating mountains and forests in all directions, and there were no signs of people in sight. The sound of the wind rustling the leaves could be heard clearly. After a while, a sneer rang out. "Lan Xiangying, right? You are truly sharp. You managed to detect even this." Nangong Lai's voice rang out. His laughter was filled with killing intent. Following this, a powerful gale descended from the sky and turned into Nangong Lai's figure. Over 100 golden immortals rushed over from all directions, surrounding Zhou Xuanji and the others. Lan Xiangying said coldly, "Nangong Lai, do you really want to oppose the divine cliff?" Nangong Lai was only a rank 1 roving bandit. Was he worthy of becoming enemies with the divine cliff? Previously, she did not take Nangong Lai seriously at all. Nangong Lai smiled contemptuously and said, "Do you know who that person was?" Lan Xiangying frowned. Although she felt that Di Guanlong was very strong, she didn't know his name. "Have you heard of the crown dragon Netherblade? It's an existence that can fight against the Buddha." Nangong Lai laughed, taking pleasure in the misfortune of others. Crown Dragon Dark Blade. Lan Xiangying and Shi Shenzong's expressions changed drastically. Zhou Xuanji had just arrived and had not heard of this name. Lan Xiangying's face quickly turned deathly pale, and fear appeared in her eyes. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Could it be that the crown dragon nether blade really had the strength to kill Han Xuzi? I'm a jinx. He had just ascended and he had to drag him to the death cliff? He didn't want to be the enemy of the whole world and need the divine cliff to protect him from the wind and rain. Kill. Today, these three can forget about leaving. Nangong Lai said with a cruel smile. After he finished speaking, he charged towards Lan Xiangying. 100 golden immortals shot over like sharp arrows, and Bai Suwen was so frightened that she hid in Zhou Xuanji's arms. Zhou Xuanji immediately unleashed the primordial chaos sword shadow. Millions of sword shadows appeared and surrounded the three of them, forming a primordial mountains and rivers. Everyone was shocked by this scene. Even Nangong Lai couldn't help but widen his eyes. The primordial sword shadow was unstoppable as it charged towards them. Shi Shenzong sighed and said, "Are you already this strong?" The primordial chaos sword shadow was extremely majestic. It was not much weaker than the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha and the ancestral dragon sword. Boom! 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 The 100 heavenly revolution golden immortals were stopped, but Nangong Lai's aura was unstoppable as he charged straight at Lan Xiangying. Lan Xiangying wasn't afraid, and she charged forward. The two void extreme immortals soared into the sky and started fighting. The might of their battle made Zhou Xuanji and the others feel quite uncomfortable, but they had no choice but to fight with their full strength. Zhou Xuanji drew close to Shi Shenzong and unleashed all sorts of sword techniques, blocking all of the golden immortals. However, their attacks were simply too ferocious, and they quickly reached him. He used world reincarnation to reflect all of the attacks, causing the golden immortals' chi and blood to roil, making them feel quite uncomfortable. What kind of evil divine ability is this? Everyone, be careful. Is there something strange about his fleshly body? Kill Shi Shenzong first. The 100 or so golden immortals discussed in fear, and their gazes locked onto Shi Shenzong's body. Shi Shenzong had just become a great emperor, so how could he be a match for them? Zhou Xuanji couldn't let them get close to Shi Shenzong. He directly sent his magic energy into the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss, summoning the Extreme Abyss. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, countless eerie winds started to blow, and a dark space suddenly appeared behind Zhou Xuanji. There was a blood moon in the sky, and it was the only source of light. This dark space quickly expanded, devouring all of them. The surrounding 100 kilometers became an extreme abyss, and even Nangong Lai and Lan Xiangying could not dodge in time. Countless evil spirits flew out from the depths of the darkness, looking like an army of locusts. There were countless of them, and they were dazzling. The 100 or so golden immortals were quickly surrounded and attacked by the evil spirits, and an evil aura filled the heavens and earth. The evil spirits wanted to devour Nangong Lai, but Nangong Lai's magic energy was powerful, and the evil spirits were unable to get close at all. What sword is this? Shi Shenzong's eyes widened. It was the first time he had seen a sword that could summon a world barrier. So powerful. As a sword cultivator, he felt incredibly envious. It was the first time Zhou Xuanji had summoned the Extreme Abyss. Looking out, countless evil spirits roared, and the scene was incredibly oppressive. The 100 or so golden immortals all unleashed divine abilities, destroying the evil spirits. The evil spirit army could only tie them down and could not deal any substantial damage to them. Seeing this, Zhou Xuanji condensed 9 sword souls, and the 9-flame chimera demon sword appeared in his left hand. The divine energy from the 2 god-slaying legendary swords entered his body, and a 9-sword violet Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead as his aura exploded out. He became serious. His body blurred as he directly unleashed 10,000 ultimate steps. A massacre officially unfolded. Shi Shenzong's eyes widened, and cold sweat poured down his forehead like rain. So powerful. He suddenly thought of Zhou Xuanji's past accomplishments. This brat could always fight those with higher cultivation stages. Now that he was a 5th revolution golden immortal, would he be invincible among golden immortals? Soon, Zhou Xuanji's performance proved his guess. With 10,000 ultimate steps, 9 sword souls, universal attraction, and world reincarnation, Zhou Xuanji killed 3 golden immortals in less than 5 breaths. The most powerful was a 6th revolution golden immortal, but they could not stop him at all. The other golden immortals were furious and surrounded him. Under the iron mask, Zhou Xuanji's eyes were filled with condescension. He did not take them seriously at all. High up in the sky, Nangong Lai had the upper hand. He noticed Zhou Xuanji's performance and frowned. This brat's talent might not be any weaker than Shi Shenzong's. Since it's so, I must kill him. After the thought, he waved his fan ferociously, and 2 waves of intense flames inundated Lan Shangying. He turned and charged toward Zhou Xuanji. A void extreme immortal was incredibly fast. Zhou Xuanji sensed danger and instinctively raised his swords and slashed upward. The 9 sword souls turned into sword light and shot towards Nangong Lai. In the blink of an eye, Nangong Lai held the fan in his right hand and pressed down, forcefully dissipating the sword qi. However, because of this, he also stopped. Lan Shangying's body spun as she slashed out with her sword. Sword light flashed out of the extreme abyss, and a clang sounded out as Nangong Lai used his other fan to block the sword. Zhou Xuanji felt furious. This old fellow dared to sneak attack him. He immediately took out all of his legendary swords, and over 100 swords appeared around him. With a thought, he used the 10,000 sword dragon incantation, and all of the swords were wrapped with dragon-shaped sword qi. Kill! He gave a low cry, and all of the swords exploded out with incredible speed, shooting out in all directions. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 425. All of the legendary swords shot out, and Zhou Xuanji fought 100 golden immortals by himself. The sword souls behind him attacked one after another. Every time they attacked, they would injure the enemy, causing them to scream in pain. So many swords. Could it be that these swords have spirits? Damn it, he's just a 5th revolution golden immortal, but he's able to stop all of us. This is a great humiliation, I can't tolerate it. Didn't you guys eat? Use your full strength. As the golden immortals defended against the attacks of the divine swords, wraiths, and sword shadows, they suddenly began to criticize and curse. With Nangong Lai watching from above, how could they not panic? They all unleashed their trump cards and swore to kill Zhou Xuanji. Unfortunately, it was of no use. One gold immortal after another was slain. The speed and strength of the divine swords were gradually increasing. Because Zhou Xuanji was drawing on the power of the heavens and the earth. After coming to the boundless world, he could not freely display his overlord of the world. But he had been working hard. After all, the power of heaven and earth in the great thousand world could not be compared to the northern wilderness region. Even if he only comprehended a small portion of it, it was enough to crush these golden immortals. Nangong Lai's cultivation level was slightly higher than Lan Shangying's. Unfortunately, his spirit powers were not as strong as Lan Shangying's, and he could not shake her off. This was the power of the Divine Cliff's core disciples. They were the cornerstones of the Divine Cliff and could hold their own. One golden immortal after another died tragically. But Zhou Xuanji's magic energy was increasing. He was using world internalization, relying on the god swords to absorb the enemy's cultivation. How could 100 golden immortals be so easily killed? Shi Shenzong sighed in amazement, and he was completely convinced by Zhou Xuanji. In terms of talent, he was really inferior to this guy. Nangong Lai panicked. These golden immortals were his blood, sweat, and tears. How could he tolerate them dying one after another? He did his best to break away from Lan Xiangying and kill Zhou Xuanji, but it was a pity that he could not do so. Only now did he realize how terrifying the core disciples of the Divine Cliff were. Previously, he had looked down on the other party because she was a woman, and now he had to pay a heavy price. Stop. Let's end it here. Nangong Lai couldn't bear the pressure and shouted. Lan Xiangying said coldly, "Tell your subordinates to retreat first." Just when she spoke, the golden immortals quickly retreated, distancing themselves from Zhou Xuanji's attack. They really couldn't hold on any longer. Nangong Lai finally relented. Lan Xiangying and Nangong Lai retreated at the same time. The two of them pulled apart, and Lan Xiangying quickly came before Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong to prevent Nangong Lai from playing any tricks. All of the legendary swords returned to Zhou Xuanji's side, ready to strike. Nangong Lai stared at him fiercely, gritted his teeth and said, "Kid, tell me your name." "Ji Xian," Zhou Xuanji said calmly. "Remember this name and find a master to read your fortune." "Very good," Nangong Lai said fiercely. With that, he left with his subordinates. He did not intend to stop here. He wanted to bring his subordinates back first before coming here alone. He must kill Zhou Xuanji before he matured. Otherwise, if he met Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong again in the future, how could he survive? Lan Xiangying turned and looked at Zhou Xuanji and said, "Come back to the Divine Cliff with me." Her heart had already flown to the Divine Cliff. Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Xuanji had no objections, and the three of them quickly headed towards the Divine Cliff. After passing through the dense fog, Zhou Xuanji and the others returned to the Divine Cliff. The Divine Cliff was located at the top of a high plateau. It was known as the cliff where immortals and gods looked down on the mortal world. The three of them were shocked to find that the Divine Cliff had not been destroyed. The disciples were still coming and going. They did not panic when they encountered a strong enemy. They flew directly toward the Cliff Master Hall. After they landed in front of the gate, Lan Xiangying bowed with cupped fists and said, "Cliff Master, we have returned." The core disciples were not the Cliff Master's disciples, only the direct disciples were. Their status was above the core disciples, and they had the qualifications to fight for the position of Cliff Master. "Come in." Han Xuzi's voice sounded, and the door opened. Zhou Xuanji and Lan Xiangying let out sighs of relief. From his tone, it was obvious that he was not seriously injured. He was as calm and unfathomable as ever. After entering the hall, the three of them saw Han Xuzi standing before the statue with a smile on his face. "Ji Xian, you indeed didn't disappoint me. Even though you didn't stop Shi Shenzong from becoming a great emperor, you brought Shi Shenzong back to the Divine Cliff." Han Xuzi lightly laughed, as if he was not afraid of Shi Shenzong at all. Shi Shenzong's talent was indeed incredible, but it was not to the point where the Divine Cliff absolutely needed him. If they dared to have evil intentions, he would just have to kill them. Zhou Xuanji replied, "It's all thanks to Fairy Lan." Lan Xiangying did not say anything. Seeing that Han Xuzi was fine, she felt at ease. Shi Shenzong silently sized up Han Xuzi. In the Center God province, Han Xuzi was an immortal-like existence who reigned above all creatures. There were not many existences who could compare to him. After Zhou Xuanji and Han Xuzi exchanged pleasantries, Lan Xiangying asked if Di Guanlong had come to attack them. Han Xuzi stroked his beard and smiled as he said, "He indeed came, but he left." Lan Xiangying felt quite confused and asked, "Why?" Di Guanlong was an existence who could fight against the Buddha, so he most likely would not lose to Han Xuzi. Even if he could not defeat him, they should have fought for a while. Han Xuzi gave a mysterious smile and looked at Shi Shenzong as he said, second-class Great Emperor, from today onwards, you will enjoy the treatment of an elite disciple and will follow by Ji Xian's side. Shi Shenzong nodded. This was the best arrangement. He was not interested in the divine cliff and had only come for Zhou Xuanji. Following this, Han Shuzi waved his hand, signaling for the three of them to leave. Even though Lan Xiangying felt quite confused, she did not dare to ask too much and left. After they walked out of the palace and the doors closed, Han Shuzi coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his face became incredibly pale. He muttered to himself, Di Guanlong is truly powerful. Behind him, the god statue in the center suddenly opened its eyes and said, Di Guanlong's target is you. You do not have any enmity with him, so I'm afraid there's a deeper scheme behind this. Han Shuzi looked back and said, Thank you for your help. The god statue said in a deep voice, You might not be able to protect this first-class Great Emperor. If you insist on protecting him, you will have to pay a great price. The 12th on the Great Emperor's stele. The top 10 were all undying legends who had not appeared for a long time. If Zhou Xuanji's identity was exposed, the entire Center God province would fall into chaos. Han Shuzi sighed and said, If the divine cliff wants to rise again, we must rely on him. Without him, the divine cliff might fall. Back then, we were used to fight against the demonic emperor, and now, the demonic emperor is about to make a comeback. He did not finish his sentence, but his meaning was clear. He wanted to take a gamble. The god statue's gaze became deep, making it impossible to see through him. After leaving the palace, Zhou Xuanji said goodbye to Lan Xiangying and brought Shi Shenzong back to his residence. Seeing Shi Shenzong, Fei Hai immediately became wary, thinking that a disciple had come to steal his business. When he found out that this person was Shi Shenzong, his attitude instantly changed, becoming fervent. Shi Shenzong was the most famous ascender in the past 100 years. He continuously pestered Shi Shenzong and asked him questions, making Shi Shenzong feel quite helpless but also quite pleased. Zhou Xuanji smirked. He suddenly realized that Shi Shenzong was still quite arrogant. Chapter 426. After Zhou Xuanji brought Shi Shenzong back, they did not go out anymore. Fei Hai helped Shi Shenzong register as an elite disciple. In less than 10 days, Ji Xian's name had become the talk of the entire Divine Cliff. It turned out that Nangong Lai bore a grudge against Zhou Xuanji, so he spread the news of Shi Shenzong being kidnapped by Ji Xian to let the world know of Ji Xian's existence. After all, the Divine Cliff had many enemies. How could those enemies allow a prodigy to rise? They would definitely think of a way to kill him. At that moment, all the disciples of the Divine Cliff were searching for Ji Xian's residence. Zhou Xuanji lived in the core disciple region, which ordinary disciples were not allowed to enter. But the core disciples came to visit one by one. There were a total of 69 core disciples in the Divine Cliff. Excluding him, there were 69 void extreme immortals. This was a conservative estimate. This was because most of the Divine Cliff's 36 envoys had surpassed golden immortals. Other than that, there were also the leaders of the Divine Cliff. The Divine Cliff's power made Zhou Xuanji sigh in amazement. This was the Great Thousand World. Among the core disciples, the one who left the deepest impression on Zhou Xuanji was the bald youth he met when he first entered the Divine Cliff. His name was Wuxia, and it was said that he was one of the top core disciples and had the potential to compete for the position of Cliff Master. Han Shuzi had high hopes for him, and it would not be long before he became a personal disciple. However, Han Shuzi's first disciple, Yang Yutian, loathed him somewhat. The enmity between the two of them was widespread in the Divine Cliff. Wuxia had a warm personality, and after chatting with Zhou Xuanji for a while, they started to call each other brother, which made Fei Hai dumbfounded. In Fei Hai's eyes, the gap between Zhou Xuanji and Wuxia was insurmountable. He did not expect Wuxia to be so enthusiastic. Those who did not know would think that he was trying to curry favor with Zhou Xuanji. 1 month later. Zhou Xuanji was finally free and could focus on cultivation, and he would occasionally give pointers to Shi Shenzong. His understanding of sword souls far surpassed Shi Shenzong's, and with just a few words, he was able to make Shi Shenzong fall into deep thought. Fei Hai really wanted Zhou Xuanji's guidance, but he did not practice the sword, so he was too embarrassed to ask. Time flew by. There were less than 7 days left until the Ascender assessment. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 92 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations sword owner for drawing, intimidating spirit, light execution water dragon, peerless beast taming bag. The sword spirit's voice sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, and he opened his eyes. At this moment, he was comprehending the power of heaven and earth in the courtyard. Shi Shenzong and Fei Hai were in another courtyard and did not disturb him. Information about the divine sword appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Light Execution Water Dragon grade, intimidating spirit description. The Light Execution Water Dragon was a mutated bloodline of the Dragon clan. It possessed great power, but it fell unexpectedly and was refined into a divine sword by the heavenly thunder. Zhou Xuanji took a look and was not interested. Once upon a time, the intimidating spirit sword could make him wild with joy. Right now, his heart was filled with worries about the world annihilation, yin-yang annihilation. Not to mention a world-destroying existence. Ancient gazing, disaster releasing, universe essence, overturning heavens, heaven span, 9 extremities, primordial chaos. He had an inexplicable feeling that the primordial world might not be the end. His strength was limitless. He shook his head and smiled. Then, he took out the beast-taming pouch. This bag looked very ordinary, and there were many red threads on its surface. There was an independent space inside the beast-taming bag, which could allow demonic beasts to survive. He called Bai Suan over to give it a try. Bai Suan bit his wrist and shouted, "Don't even think about it." After cursing, he ran and disappeared. Zhou Xuanji was infuriated and mumbled, "I will find a chance to boil you into snake soup." Half a day later. Near dusk, emissary Li Qing came to visit. He said that it was time to participate in the Ascendant examination. The Ascendant examination was held in the mysterious Tribulation Crater. The mysterious Tribulation Crater was the Dao Heaven sect's territory. It connected to the underground world and had existed for millions of years. The Dao Heaven sect's Mount Divine Cliff had a longer history, and so did their foundation. In the Divine Province, the Dao Heaven sect was definitely one of the top 3 overlord-level factions. All the ascendants in the past 100 years would gather in the mysterious Tribulation Crater. Most of the newly ascended would not participate and would wait for the next round. But there were some geniuses who were more daring. It was said that the Hegemon Sword Emperor was like this. A newborn calf was not afraid of a tiger. But he lost miserably. Each ascendant could only participate in the Ascendant examination once, and the maximum time limit was 500 years. In other words, if one did not participate within 500 years, it would be equivalent to giving up. The Ascendant examination was held jointly by all the major factions. Other than allowing their disciples to shine, it also allowed independent ascendants to have a chance to be chosen by the major factions. Of course, there was another explanation. That was the internal strife of the major factions. In the Ascendant examination, life and death were up to fate. Under emissary Li Qing's lead, Zhou Xuanji came to the Divine Cliff City's gate. He did not bring Bai Suan. The Ascendant examination did not allow external help after all. Shi Shenzong was still too weak, so emissary Li Qing did not recommend him to participate. Shi Shenzong did not force him either. In front of the city gate, 33 ascendants were waiting. They were not all human cultivators. There were also other races. It had to be said that the northern wilderness region had really declined. Looking at these ascendants, they were all beyond great tribulation scattered immortals. Zhou Xuanji attracted everyone's attention. He was the only one who ascended to become a core disciple. How could the other ascendants not care? Wu Mingyi felt the most complicated. He ascended with Zhou Xuanji, and they even became a joke. Emissary Li Qing took out a gourd-shaped fan, which quickly grew in size and carried everyone away. Along the way, Emissary Li Qing began to explain the rules of the ascendant examination. Only the top 10 would be rewarded. In the examination, they could work together or fight alone. They could use any means. When the time came, everyone would have an identity medallion. After crushing the medallion, the Dao Heaven sect's powerhouses would teleport them out. The specific rules of the examination would be announced by the Dao Heaven sect. The ascendant examination this time is different from the past. Many geniuses are disciples of top-tier factions in the divine province and were purposely sent to the mortal realm to be nurtured. You must be careful. The most powerful one is called Mo Yuha. He's the son of the sovereign demon sect lord. He's already a 10th revolution golden immortal and is half a step into void extreme immortal. Just as Emissary Li Qing spoke, the disciples became restless. They had all killed their way here from the mortal realm and felt that people like Mo Yuha were shameless. Those mortals who fought with him were truly tragic. Zhou Xuanji silently remembered Mo Yuha. He had heard of the sovereign demon sect. The number 1 demonic faction in the divine province, the divine cliff, was no match for them. 200,000 years ago, the sovereign demon sect had almost destroyed the divine cliff. Back then, the sovereign demon sect had been extremely powerful and had almost unified the divine province. This was similar to the northern wilderness region's Tanhua sect. However, the sovereign demon sect was still an overlord-level faction, and no one dared to offend them. Emissary Li Qing seemed to remember something and continued to say, apart from Mo Yuha, there's another person you must be careful of. His name is Gu Moyuan, and he's a descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline. You all should know the origins of the demonic emperor bloodline. Chapter 427. Top 10. The Divine Cliff's Ascenders were in an uproar. There were at least 1,000 Ascenders in this Ascender examination. Most of them had been in the Great Thousand World for hundreds of years and were prepared to fight to the death. Top 10 was extremely difficult. Of course, some felt that top 10 was not a problem. There were those who were confident that their lives were higher than the heavens. After all, they had fought their way out of the mortal realm and defeated many powerful enemies. Zhou Xuanji sat down and began to sense the power of the world. The others quietened down. There was no use bragging now. Only when they reached the mysterious tribulation crater would they be able to see their true abilities. Emissary Li Qing smiled and did not speak much. He focused on controlling the gourd fan. The divine cliff was very far from the mysterious tribulation crater, and they might encounter danger along the way. The center god province was much safer than the mortal realm because there were too many powerful cultivators here. Too many powerful cultivators would do anything to become more powerful. The best way to describe it was that a fellow Daoist would rather die than a fellow Daoist. The mysterious tribulation crater had existed for an unknown period of time. It was created by the heavens and the earth. The crater was 1,000 miles wide and was filled with canyons that led deep underground. It was extremely majestic. At the edge of the crater, there were castles in all directions. These were the structures that the Dao Heaven sect used to guard the mysterious tribulation crater. Each one was guarded by a void extreme immortal. Above the mysterious tribulation crater, there were layers of clouds. The Dao Heaven sect was above the clouds and was formed by thousands of floating islands. Looking from above, these floating islands looked like a Tai Chi diagram. At this moment, the Tao Heaven sect was extremely lively. With the arrival of the Ascender tribulation, guests from all over gathered at the Tao Heaven sect, causing the sect to be in an uproar. In a palace, the Tao Heaven sect's elder Li Zhangqi was receiving the sovereign demon sect. Li Zhangqi wore a Taoist robe and had a goatee. He sat on the main seat and chatted happily with the sovereign demon sect's elder, Guanhong. Guanhong had a muscular body and looked like an iron tower. He wore a black robe that looked like a skeleton, and when he smiled, he looked extremely savage. The other Tao Heaven sect disciples in the palace did not look well. After all, the Tao Heaven sect belonged to the righteous path. They had righteous hearts and did not like the sovereign demon sect, but they were too powerful. After so many years, the Tao Heaven sect has become more powerful. Congratulations! Our sovereign demon sect cannot compare. What are you talking about? This Mo Yuha is a genius that only appears once in a million years. In terms of talent, our Tao Heaven sect has lost. His talent is indeed amazing, but the Tao Heaven sect's disciples aren't bad either. This time's Ascender test will be the time for nephew Mo to soar into the skies. I hope so. Li Zhangqi and Guanhong flattered each other, both were very happy. Mo Yuha sat by Guanhong's side. He didn't seem interested at all. He stared at his own fingernails and waited idly. His face was devilishly handsome, and his white hair was coiled into a golden crown. Although compared to Guanhong, his stature was smaller, his aura was not lacking, making it hard for others to ignore him. The Tao Heaven sect disciples looked at him from time to time with hostility in their eyes. Mo Yuha's reputation was too great. After ascending for 300 years, his name had already spread throughout the Center God province. Although he was a second-grade great sovereign, his cultivation talent was not any weaker than a first-grade great sovereign. It was highly possible that he would become the next sect master of the sovereign demon sect. At this time, a disciple ran in and said anxiously, "Elderly, the Buddha ghost cult is here." Buddha ghost sect. Guanhong's expression instantly changed. In the Center God province, the sovereign demon sect and the Buddha ghost sect were mortal enemies. Once the followers of both sides met, they would definitely draw their swords against each other, and the result would be either death or injury. This was especially true for the two sect masters. Li Zhangqi's eyes sparkled as he said, "Receive them well. Let them in." Guanhong's expression turned hostile immediately. After flying for 5 days, the Divine Cliffs group finally arrived at the mysterious tribulation crater. Looking from afar, everyone was shocked by the mysterious tribulation crater. Zhou Xuanji was the same. He guessed that a star had fallen and smashed the ground into such a state. How big must it be? Emissary Li Qing said with a smile, "The truly spectacular thing is not the surface but the underground." Having heard this, the group became even more curious about the mysterious tribulation crater. Soon, they came to a garrison city of the Tao Heaven sect. After revealing their identities, the Tao Heaven sect disciples led them to the Tao Heaven sect, which was high up in the clouds. An hour later, Emissary Li Qing brought Zhou Xuanji to the Tao Heaven sect's meeting hall. As for the other disciples, they were brought to their residences. This caused the ascended disciples to feel jealous. This is differential treatment. He is someone who can take away Shishenzong. But so what? I can defeat Shishenzong too. He is a third-class great emperor. What about us? Be content. It's the same everywhere. Everyone's talent is eye-catching. They sighed in amazement as they entered the residence. Zhou Xuanji followed Emissary Li Qing to the meeting hall. In the hall, there were only Li Zhangqi and a few Tao Heaven sect disciples. There were no other sections. Emissary Li Qing cupped his fist and smiled, "Long time no see." Elderly Li Zhangqi nodded and chuckled, "This must be Ji Xian, who rose to fame recently. A third-class Great Emperor. Impressive. It's rare even in the Tao Heaven sect. A third-class Great Emperor was not worthy of his attention, but Zhou Xuanji could make a second-class Great Emperor, Shishenzong, follow him. This alone was enough for him to rope him in. It was always good to have another friend. Emissary Li Qing shook his head with a smile. He's all right. Let's see if he can show his brilliance in this Ascender examination. The two began chatting. Zhou Xuanji did not speak but listened quietly. This was Emissary Li Qing's instruction. He was probably afraid that Zhou Xuanji would be bewitched by the Tao Heaven sect. Half an hour later, Li Zhangqi let them leave. Before he left, he reminded the various factions about the Ascender's factions, which was a special treat. After leaving the hall, a Tao Heaven sect disciple brought them to the Divine Cliff's residence. After entering the residence, Emissary Li Qing said, "See? The Tao Heaven sect is full of sanctimonious people." His tone was filled with disdain. Zhou Xuanji laughed. "Weren't you flattering him happily?" The two of them found a guest room to stay in. Tomorrow was the Ascender examination. The specific rules would only be known tomorrow. At night, 3 Tao Heaven sect disciples came to visit. They made an identity medallion for each ascended disciple and recorded their name and sect. After returning to his room, Zhou Xuanji sat on his bed and played with the identity medallion in his hand. The medallion was as big as a jade pendant. It was entirely red, and 3 small words were carved on it. Divine Cliff, Ji Xian. Tomorrow. I look forward to it. Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself with a smile. As long as he got first place, he would receive the greatest reward. According to Han Shuzi, it was enough for him to ascend to 10th Revolution Golden Immortal within 10 years. By then, with the all-evil yin-yang destruction, he would be as powerful as a void extreme immortal. This night, he was not the only one who looked forward to it. The next morning. Boom! Everyone was woken up. A solemn voice came, "The Ascender examination is about to begin. All ascended disciples, please head to the mysterious tribulation crater and wait." Just when the voice finished, Zhou Xuanji sensed many auras sweeping toward the ground. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 428. Zhou Xuanji walked out of the guest room, and Emissary Li Qing was already waiting outside. He looked at Zhou Xuanji and said, "Go down. You will have to rely on yourself from now on." The other Divine Cliff's ascended disciples soared into the sky and into the clouds. Zhou Xuanji nodded. He came into the clouds with the 8-step sword lunge and dashed downward quickly. Swoosh! A silhouette flew past him. That person was much faster than him. He glanced over and saw that it was Mo Yuha. Of course, he could not recognize Mo Yuha yet. Hundreds of ascenders had gathered in the vast mysterious tribulation crater. Some were in groups, while others were alone. Looking from above, it was difficult to spot them. Zhou Xuanji did not fly toward the Divine Cliff's disciples. He landed on a giant rock and sat down casually. What happened yesterday had already estranged him from his peers. He did not bother to form a group. The ascenders landed one after another. Whispers could be heard from all directions. Some burst out in laughter, seeming very excited. Zhou Xuanji looked up and saw a billowing sea of clouds. People from various sects and the Tao Heaven sect's disciples stood on the clouds and looked down. This scene reminded him of the Beast Colosseum. He was one of the beasts. Zhou Xuanji shook his head with a smile and stopped thinking about it. He continued internalizing qi to store more magic energy in the Tianxia map. Half an hour later, all the ascenders gathered in the mysterious tribulation crater. There were more than 1,300 of them, and they were all golden immortals. There are two rules for this Ascender examination. One is to collect Earth core crystals, and the other is to eliminate other Ascenders. The longer you last, the better your result. The number of Earth core crystals for those who are eliminated will not be counted. The remaining Ascenders will be ranked according to the number of Earth core crystals. This examination will last for a month. At that time, I will project your battle situation into the sky for everyone to see. The majestic voice came again, and many Ascenders were shocked. If everyone could see their performance, wouldn't it mean that they could not use underhanded methods? Of course, they might embarrass themselves. Now, go underground and collect Earth core crystals. The majestic voice continued. No one could find him. More than 1,300 Ascenders dived into the crevices and canyons, charging toward the depths of the earth. Zhou Xuanji was in no hurry. Rather than collecting the geocentric flame crystals himself, he might as well let them collect first, and then he could loot them. Soon, he was the only one left on the ground. The people in the clouds were discussing. Who is that person? Scared? He seems to be a core disciple of the Divine Cliff. He's that Ji Xian who subdued Shi Shenzong. TSK, the final victory of this test belongs to Mo Yuha. Not necessarily. Gu Moyuan from the Buddha ghost cult isn't bad either. Guess which sect's disciple will kill first? Zhou Xuanji ignored all the discussions above him. After a while, he turned into a stream of sword light and dove into the crack. After he disappeared, a layer of golden light covered the profound tribulation crater. It was a formation to prevent people from taking advantage of the situation. Zhou Xuanji quickly traveled through the cracks. He found that the cracks and canyons were all connected, and he could not see the end or the depths. Two people were already fighting in front of him. Zhou Xuanji went around them and headed underground at full speed. At this moment, he turned into a gust of wind, moving at an extremely fast speed. Very quickly, he found a deserted cave and entered it to cultivate. At the same time, images appeared in the sky above the profound tribulation crater, showing the situation of all the Ascenders. Some were diving down crazily, some were fighting, and some were hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Zhou Xuanji was not eye-catching. The most domineering was Mo Yuha. This guy was not in a hurry to find Earth core crystals. He hunted down the Ascenders everywhere, and whoever he encountered, he would fight without saying a word. Guanhong, the sovereign demon sect's elder, burst into laughter and ignored everyone else. The sects whose disciples were killed did not dare to say anything. On the tallest floating island, in a temple, an old man was lighting incense. He was the sect lord of the Dao Heaven sect, Taichu Yudao. Li Zhangqi walked up to him and cupped his fist respectfully. Senior apprentice brother, the test has begun. Do you have any instructions? Taichu Yudao turned around. His face was filled with vicissitudes, and he wore a white robe. He smiled amiably, nothing much. Just prevent the powerful cultivators from interfering in the dark. He looked weak, and half of his body was buried in the ground. But he was actually one of the powerhouses of the Center God province. His divine abilities were unparalleled, and he was once known as the most powerful person below the immortals. Senior apprentice brother, who do you think will win? Li Zhangqi asked curiously. This matter was of great importance, and he could rope in the sect that Ascender was from. Taichu Yudao glanced at him and chuckled, the youngest person will win. Li Zhangqi was stunned. The youngest? Most Ascenders were above 5,000 years old. How could he know their exact age? He could not possibly ask them one by one. The seniors of the sects might not know either. Taichu Yudao stroked his long beard and said with a smile, this test will be very exciting. Li Zhangqi was even more confused. It was the first time he heard his senior apprentice brother say such a thing. Time passed. 7 days had passed, and more than 400 ascenders had been eliminated. The sounds of battle underground rose and fell for a long time. Zhou Xuanji's ears almost grew calluses. This day. He got up slowly and took out the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss, preparing to hunt. He flew down quickly. Soon, he encountered an ascender. A 6th Revolution Golden Immortal was very powerful. This person was hunting as well. Once he saw Zhou Xuanji, he charged at him immediately. This person had messy long hair and wore black armor. He held a long spear in each hand, and the cape on his back burned like a blazing flame. Zhou Xuanji cut off his right arm with 10,000 ultimate steps straightaway. His blood spilled into the abyss. How can it be? The black-armored ascender was almost scared out of his wits. Just when he was about to turn around, the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss pierced through his chest. Boom! Zhou Xuanji pressed him against the wall and stepped on his shoulders. He looked down at him with a cold gaze. Hand over all your earth core crystals, or die. The black-armored ascender understood immediately that he could not defeat Zhou Xuanji. He took out his identity medallion and was about to crush it. Zhou Xuanji was faster. He snatched the medallion and threw it into the ground. You! He opened his eyes wide and cursed furiously. Zhou Xuanji absorbed his magic energy with world internalization, which frightened him so much that he immediately shut up. Cold sweat covered his body. He immediately took out 6 earth core crystals and gave them to Zhou Xuanji. The earth core crystals were of different sizes. They were rocks that looked like lava. Zhou Xuanji took out the truth sword and pierced it into the black-armored ascender's body. Do you have more? He asked. The black-armored ascender replied instinctively, yes, a lot of them. The next second, his expression turned into horror. Zhou Xuanji looked at him with a cold smile, which frightened him so much that he took out another 20 earth core crystals. More? Of course. What's going on? The black-armored ascender took out another 8 earth core crystals. More? Zhou Xuanji said with a mocking smile. Chapter 429. There's really nothing else. The black-armored ascender wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He stared at Zhou Xuanji, feeling incredibly terrified. He did not understand why he would uncontrollably reveal the truth. What an evil divine ability. Zhou Xuanji stored all the earth core crystals into the supreme storage and continued to absorb his magic energy. One had to admit that this fellow was ruthless enough to have so many geocentric flame crystals. At the same time, it also showed that geocentric flame crystals were not as hard to obtain as he had imagined. Fortunately, he had discovered this beforehand. Otherwise, they might not be able to win even if they took action in the last few days. What if someone was stealing the earth core crystals all the time? How much longer do you want to suck? The black-armored ascender could not help but ask in grief and indignation. If he were to continue absorbing like this, his magic power would be sucked dry. At that time, any random person would be able to kill him. Zhou Xuanji replied calmly, "Are you in a hurry?" The black-armored ascender almost vomited blood. "If it were you, wouldn't you be anxious? I beg you." His voice was as soft as a mosquito's as he pleaded. Zhou Xuanji smiled disdainfully. He turned into a stream of sword light and dove deeper into the abyss. The black-armored ascender heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly flew away. He didn't have the guts to look for his identity token, so he could only escape from the profound tribulation pit and admit defeat. In the following period of time, Zhou Xuanji madly searched for ascenders. Not only did he rob them of their geocentric flame crystals, but he also absorbed their cultivation to strengthen himself. This scene attracted the attention of many people outside. Those people are so stupid. Why did they clearly state how many geocentric flame crystals they have? Something's wrong. He seems to have the ability to absorb other people's cultivation. Indeed, listen carefully. The disciples of the Divine Cliff are really good. This kid is very strong. Almost all his enemies are killed in an instant. Not only were there images in the sky, but there were also sounds. However, the sounds were very faint, and if one listened carefully, they would be able to hear the voices of various ascenders. Sage Yutian and the Celestial Hall's soldiers stood on the clouds as well. He frowned. He felt that the Divine Cliff's Ji Xian was very similar to Zhou Xuanji. That shouldn't be the case. Why did Zhou Xuanji ascend to the Divine Cliff? He couldn't understand, but he had heard that Ji Xian had subdued Shishenzong. Zhou Xuanji had defeated Shishenzong in the mortal realm, and it was he who persuaded Shishenzong to ascend. If Ji Xian was really Zhou Xuanji, what should he do? If this matter was exposed, it would be equivalent to offending the Divine Cliff. Zhou Xuanji did not know that he had already attracted the attention of many people. Even if he knew, he would not care. In less than 3 days, he had robbed 78 ascenders, and the number of geocentric flame crystals he had obtained exceeded 1,000. He couldn't help but sigh. So geocentric crystals really were very common. He had originally thought that it was some kind of gem or heavenly treasure used to forge magic tools. As it turned out, he was thinking too much. He continued to dive. According to his estimation, this place was already about 30,000 meters underground. It was starting to become difficult to find an ascender. Most of them had already been eliminated, and the rest were hiding. Zhou Xuanji came to a sudden stop after going around the winding tunnels. There was a figure standing on a boulder in front of him. 3 corpses were lying on the edge of the boulder, and they had all died horribly. Zhou Xuanji looked over. That person was dressed in exquisite red clothes. His figure was tall and straight, and his black hair was messy. In the dim underground space, he looked like a demon. He grabbed a ball of flesh and put it to his mouth. He began chewing on it, which disgusted Zhou Xuanji. A 5th revolution golden immortal. His aura is very strong. He's almost at the 7th revolution golden immortal level. Kid, sign up. The man in red laughed cruelly. His hoarse voice made one's scalp numb. Divine Cliff, Ji Xian, Zhou Xuanji replied. This person gave him a sense of danger, extreme danger. It seemed that he was not someone to be trifled with. Could he be Mo Yuha? Or the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline? Ji Xian? I've heard of you. My name is Gu Moyuan. You should have heard of me too. The man in red laughed coldly. After that, he leaped down and flung away the flesh in his hand. After that, he wiped the flesh on his body, which was extremely disgusting. Gu Moyuan. The descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline. In the Great Thousand World, there was more than one descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline. They all inherited the demonic emperor bloodline perfectly and were highly sought after by the evil sections. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes and mumbled, I've heard of you indeed. He carried the ghost emperor Extreme Abyss and walked forward. 9 sword souls appeared behind him. Above the clouds, Sage Yutian clenched his fists and squinted his eyes. It's him indeed. He mumbled. He turned to look at Emissary Li Qing, who was far away. Emissary Li Qing was staring at him with a faint smile. The threatening look in his eyes made Zhou Xuanji break out in cold sweat. Gu Moyuan sized up the 9 sword souls and said with interest, Sword souls. Interesting. He flipped his right hand, and a blood-colored long saber appeared in his hand. Boom! The two of them clashed into each other instantly and began an intense battle in this narrow space. Both of them wanted to be the champion, so they were not afraid to fight. Sword lights flashed, and numerous sword souls shot out. Gu Moyuan swung his blood-colored saber and blocked them all. His expression was cold, but he was shocked in his heart. Such power. This guy is not simple indeed. As a 9th Revolution Golden Immortal, he was not afraid of Zhou Xuanji. He immediately used his full power to suppress Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji activated 10,000 ultimate steps and charged to Gu Moyuan's back. He slashed at Gu Moyuan and was about to decapitate him. Gu Moyuan's shoulders jerked, and a blood mist exploded behind him, forcing Zhou Xuanji back. The blood mist landed on Zhou Xuanji's body and turned into strands of smoke. Corrosive power. Zhou Xuanji quickly dodged and swung his sword with his right hand. His sword qi ravaged Gu Moyuan relentlessly. Outside. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji and Gu Moyuan were evenly matched, countless people were in an uproar. Ji Xian from the Divine Cliff is so powerful? A 5th Revolution Golden Immortal fighting against a 9th Revolution Golden Immortal? He can use 9 sword souls at the same time. He's not simple. He's a genius in the sword's way. Where did the Divine Cliff find such a genius? The Divine Cliff indeed. There are countless geniuses. The people from various sects exclaimed in amazement. Only the people from the Buddha Ghost sect and Sage Yutian looked terrible. Gu Moyuan came from the Buddha Ghost sect, and the people from the sect felt embarrassed. After all, Gu Moyuan's cultivation was 4 revolutions higher than Zhou Xuanji's. Sage Yutian's heart shuddered. Zhou Xuanji's rate of growth was too horrifying. He could dominate the Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortal stage right after he ascended. 100 years later, wouldn't he become a Void Extreme Immortal? 10,000 years later, would he become a true god? They were both true gods, but he was not confident that he could defeat Zhou Xuanji. His eyes turned grim as he began to think of a countermeasure. Ha ha ha. Awesome. Gu Moyuan laughed wildly. His face turned greedy and arrogant. Zhou Xuanji's prowess did not enrage him but made him even more excited. He immediately split into hundreds of duplicates and slashed at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji transformed into a legendary sword with a shake of his body. He charged forward with the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss, destroying the duplicates one after another and charging toward Gu Moyuan. Boom! 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 The underground space began to collapse. Rocks smashed into the two like they were made of paper. They were fearless and only had eyes for each other. His flesh must be delicious. Gu Moyuan thought. Chapter 430. Gu Moyuan lived up to his name as the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline. His talent for battle was just as powerful. Even with the god-slaying legendary sword, Zhou Xuanji could only barely fight him to a draw. However, Zhou Xuanji had yet to use the world's power. He was enlightened. It seemed like he could already sweep through the entire Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortal realm. Zhou Xuanji immediately used universal attraction and sucked Gu Moyuan before him. Gu Moyuan was shocked and slashed with his saber instinctively. Saber Qi swept out and landed on Zhou Xuanji's body, but it was rebounded by world reincarnation. Bang! Gu Moyuan was sent flying by his own Saber Qi. He smashed through the underground rocks and flew 1,000 meters. Zhou Xuanji followed up with another attack. He activated the primordial Chaos Sword Shadow, and countless sword shadows transformed into a primordial river that surged forward. He walked on the waves, holding the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss in his hand. He laughed in disdain. Descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline? That's all there is to it. The World Fool sword appeared in his left hand. When Gu Moyuan heard this, a nefarious fire ignited in his heart. Murderous intent burst forth from his eyes as he raised his blade and charged forward. Zhou Xuanji had already activated the world's power and was fearless. Gu Moyuan collided head-on with the primordial sword river and was sent flying. What's going on? His eyes widened in shock. How did Zhou Xuanji's magic energy suddenly become so powerful? He could not understand, and Zhou Xuanji did not give him time to think either. He unleashed all sorts of sword techniques at him, dazzling and domineering. Outside, all of the spectators were attracted by Zhou Xuanji's sword technique. This kid is proficient in so many sword techniques. Are you serious? Gu Moyuan is being suppressed. He's too strong. Could it be that his mana is inexhaustible? With so many sword techniques squandering magic power, if it were me, I might have already run out of energy. Is he really a 5th revolution golden immortal? Did you use some sort of concealment technique to hide your cultivation? Everyone was stunned. Sage Yutian's face fell, and he sighed inwardly. He still hadn't displayed his greatest ability. Emissary Li Qing's face was already blooming with smiles. He suddenly felt that asking Han Xuzi to take Zhou Xuanji in was a wise decision. Such a genius should not be obliterated. Zhou Xuanji crushed Gu Moyuan. His eyes were fixed on him, in case he took out his identity medallion and admitted defeat at any time. Damn it, Gu Moyuan gnashed his teeth. He was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. At this moment, he could no longer be excited. For some reason, he felt that Zhou Xuanji was very annoying and despicable. He did not think about why Zhou Xuanji was so powerful and only wanted to torture this guy to death. The sword souls behind Zhou Xuanji slashed toward Gu Moyuan. Under the impact of the primordial sword river, it was very difficult for Gu Moyuan to block the attack of the sword soul. In the blink of an eye, he was covered in wounds. The two of them moved quickly. The primordial sword river was unstoppable. Along the way, they met many ascenders. Those ascenders were so frightened that they fled in panic. Was that Gu Moyuan? They had the same question in their minds. Since the start of the Ascender exam, Gu Moyuan had already become an existence akin to a great demon king in the eyes of the Ascenders. Other than Mo Yuha, everyone else was terror-stricken upon hearing his name. Mo Yuha and Gu Moyuan had met more than once, but the two of them always brushed past each other with tacit understanding. They wanted to fight it out at the end. The dignity of the Paragon Demon sect and the Buddha Ghost sect made them view each other as people they must kill. Gu Moyuan, you are no match for me. Hand over the geocentric flame crystals on you and I will spare your life. Zhou Xuanji looked down at Gu Moyuan and cried out coldly. With the World Fool sword in his hand, Zhou Xuanji's words almost made Gu Moyuan explode in anger. Who do you think you are? Gu Moyuan roared furiously. Strands of blood qi emanated from his body and covered his body, forming into a muscular demonic shadow. The demonic shadow clenched its fist and punched furiously. Boom! The primordial sword river was blasted apart by the demonic shadow's fist. The gust from the fist sent Zhou Xuanji flying backward. He quickly stepped on the cave wall and looked up. The demonic shadow was 15 meters tall and quickly materialized. It seemed to be wearing a layer of armor, and its face could not be seen clearly. It gave off an evil aura that made Zhou Xuanji's heart shudder. What is that? Zhou Xuanji thought in astonishment. He could sense that Gu Moyuan's aura was growing more dangerous. With the demonic shadow behind him, Gu Moyuan charged toward Zhou Xuanji with ghostly speed. Zhou Xuanji blocked with his sword instinctively. With a loud clang, he was sent flying backward. His golden invincible body shattered the rocks and soil. Before he could react, Gu Moyuan stomped on his abdomen. The horrifying force twisted his face. Dog! He roared furiously in his heart and used sword chi soar straightaway to force Gu Moyuan back. Gu Moyuan turned into a ferocious beast and dashed along the cave wall. His eyes were beaming with a terrifying red radiance. Zhou Xuanji immediately activated the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. With his head on the top of the cave, Zhou Xuanji rose from the ground and quickly reached a height of 300 meters. Zhou Xuanji entered the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha's body, and Gu Moyuan crashed into him like he was ramming into a golden bell. With a loud clang, he was sent flying backward. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha stretched out 1,000 hands and slashed wildly at Gu Moyuan. In an instant, the demonic shadow was almost shattered. In the outside world, everyone from the heavenly hall recognized Zhou Xuanji. They gnashed their teeth and began cursing furiously. Their words were heard by the others, which caused a huge commotion. Zhou Xuanji? He's that first-class great emperor? The heavenly hall is **ting. Zhou Xuanji has not ascended yet. It's him. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. That's his signature divine ability. Really? The divine cliff is so powerful. Tisk tsk. I don't understand why the divine cliff would allow him to become a first-class great emperor directly. The spectators discussed among themselves in shock. Other than the heavenly hall and the Buddha ghost sect, the other factions did not harbor much enmity toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji was indeed from the northern wilderness, but he had already become a great emperor and cut off his connection with the demonic emperor. Naturally, he was not an evil demon. His opponent was the real evil demon. However, Zhou Xuanji's talent was too powerful, which made people's imaginations run wild. Li Zhang came to a realization. So his senior apprentice brother was talking about this brat. He had heard about Zhou Xuanji before. He was not even 100 years old, but his talent was outrageous. He disappeared immediately. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji felt extremely comfortable. The Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha was still the most comfortable. He was not afraid that his identity would be exposed. Even Han Shuzi was not afraid, so why should he be afraid? Even if the sky fell, the divine cliff would hold it up. Gu Moyuan could not retaliate at all. His body sank into the pile of rubble. He was extremely furious and roared, "Ji Xian. Kill me if you have the guts, or I will make you beg for death." He was the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline and had a high position in the Buddha ghost sect. Yet, he was suppressed by a third-class great emperor. This was a great humiliation. I cannot tolerate this. Zhou Xuanji laughed coldly, hand over the earth core crystal. Do you really want to die? As he spoke, he began to use world internalization. Each slash absorbed Gu Moyuan's magic energy, which woke him up immediately as though his furious heart was splashed with cold water. He's absorbing my magic energy. Okay. I'll hand it over. Gu Moyuan cried out reluctantly, and Zhou Xuanji stopped immediately. Just when he stopped, Gu Moyuan dashed up and was about to escape. How could Zhou Xuanji let him escape? He immediately used universal attraction and sucked Gu Moyuan over. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha slashed wildly again and smashed him into the ground. Aggrieved. I want to cry. This was how Gu Moyuan felt. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.